Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. You can leave us a voicemail at any time at 844-899-TVLR, or you can call in right now. Our phones are open, and we'll take your calls live on the air. Really, folks, we've got an exciting show for you today. Really looking forward to getting into everything. We are going to be, there's so much to get to that there was a general strike yesterday, and we're not going to get to it for another 2 hours. Isn't that crazy? Lots of stuff happening. And we're going to talk about the general strike in Minnesota yesterday. At 11:30 a.m., we're going to be talking to 11:40. We're going to be talking to actually at least one person that I know in that area. Going to be reacting to some of the news from the strike. Really, really exciting stuff there. We're also going to be talking about here in just a couple of minutes, Huntsville Hospital attempting to buy their only competitor in the Huntsville metro area. And we'll be talking about some dumb Alabama legislators saying that they've never seen racism in their 30 years as a police officer in the state of Alabama. You know, that's an interesting claim. And we're going to be talking to a Chattanooga stagehand about why unions are important, why the stagehands union is important. Folks, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today, so really excited to talk to you about it. 844-899-TVLR. 844-899-8857 is the phone number. You can also leave us a written note at any time at tvlr.fm/contact. Let's get into this first story. It's a local story. And, with the hospital, the weather and everything is really concerning, and hopefully everybody stays safe and you're not going to need to go to the hospital. But if you do, your choices for hospitals in the Huntsville area are about to decrease as the Huntsville Hospital is announced that they are going to be buying they're going to be buying Crestwood, which is the only competitor to Huntsville Hospital in the Huntsville metro area. A $450 million purchase. And, I've got so many thoughts about it. But the first thing, I guess because it's sort of chronologically the first thing that I found as I was reading into this that I thought was interesting was that back in August of 2025, AL.com did just, I don't want to say necessarily a fluff piece, but just kind of a description piece about how Huntsville Hospital dominates the healthcare market in North Alabama. And they just kind of go through a bunch of numbers about how Huntsville Hospital is the biggest healthcare provider in North Alabama, and how it's really began to dominate the market. And in that article, the author says that the CEO, Jeff Sams, said, quote, "There is no immediate plan to expand further." Now, look, guys, I'm not a big business person. I'm not a big fancy business boy, but I have to think that a decision to spend $500 million is one that takes more than 5 months, right? August 13th was only 5 months ago. And you're expecting me to believe that that Huntsville Hospital decided to spend $500 million to acquire Crestwood? That idea went from germination, like the first time this idea was ever thought of, happened after August, and then it was already boom bam done, executed by the end of January. That's like fishy to me. And it's not even like, it's not like he was under oath talking to the reporter or anything like that. And so, oh no, he lied to a reporter. But that's weird, right? I mean, isn't it weird that the CEO of Huntsville Hospital was just saying 5 months ago that there is no plan to expand further? And then 5 months ago, they make a $500 million purchase of their only competitor in the market. It's almost like they knew that if the public was given any sort of runway, any sort of opportunity to challenge this decision, that maybe the public wouldn't like 100% 100% of the healthcare market to be dominated by one company. Maybe, right? I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a big fancy business boy. Maybe $500 million decisions can just be made in like 150 days. It's possible, I suppose. Like I said, I'm concerned about it because generally speaking, there has been a trend nationwide towards consolidation, right? I mean, in market after market, you talk about airlines, you talk about meat packing, you talk about beef processing, you talk about grocery stores, retail, in any market that you can imagine. The trend nationwide has been towards consolidation. The biggest players eating up the smaller players and acquiring more and more power in the market, and then pushing entrepreneurs and small businesses out of the market, making the environment less competitive. And, we've been in this world for 50 years, right? And we can see that it's not been good for working people. Specifically, let's look at the healthcare market. National Nurses United is the largest nursing union in the country. And so because of that, right, they have a lot of really good data about healthcare company consolidation. And specifically, we're on the radio also in New Orleans, and so we've been in particular contact with the nurses union in New Orleans. And so they've got a report, the nurses union in New Orleans, that they put out last year in November, that talks about how hospital consolidation in New Orleans has significantly hurt consumers and patients and the community in New Orleans. Let's take a look at some of these numbers. The LCMC Health, that's the name of the biggest hospital in the region. In 2015, that company only had 25% of the market share, right? I mean, I think even in 2015 they were the biggest, but only having 25% of the market, you can't. There's a lot that you cannot do with only 25% of the market. When their share of the market was only 25%, their charge to cost ratio was actually lower than the average charge to cost ratio in the region. The charge to cost ratio, it's what it sounds like. It is the ratio that the hospital charges compared to how much it costs them to administer the care, right? So if your charge to cost ratio is 576 to 100, that means you are charging $576 for every $100 in costs, okay? So back in 2015, their charge to cost ratio, LCMC Health, was smaller than the average charge to cost ratio in the region. Now, it significantly outstrips the regional average. Now they are charging $576 for every $100 in costs. And some of their hospitals even charge $829 for every $100 in costs. What's going to happen when one provider in Huntsville owns 100% of the market? Right? They don't own 100% of the market right now, but already, they basically have a monopoly. But when they have a real proper monopoly, what is that going to do to the price of healthcare in the region? Additionally, there's a lot of reason for workers to be concerned. I mean, you take a look at Huntsville Hospital and Crestwood now. I mean, I didn't realize actually that Crestwood pays more than Huntsville Hospital, and not insignificantly. Like I was looking at Reddit. Nurses from both of these places have talked about their experience on Reddit, on Glassdoor and stuff like that. And it looks like it's like 10%. Like Crestwood nurses make something like 10% more than nurses at Huntsville Hospital. That's significant, right? I mean, you give anybody a 10% raise, they're going to be really, really happy. So obviously, once Huntsville Hospital takes over Crestwood, management is going to want to change that. Management is going to want to either cut costs, cut wages for Crestwood nurses, or just not give them raises, which the probably more likely thing is that they're going to not give these workers raises for like 10 years. Until they are at parity with Huntsville Hospital. And Huntsville Hospital already pays some of the lowest wages for healthcare professionals in the country. I got this idea from Reddit as well. There was a fellow who looked at the occupational and employment wage statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics for nurse practitioners, and nursing assistants by county. And, there's like hundreds of counties across the country. And so you can download from the BLS the spreadsheet of all the counties in the country, and what the average nurse practitioner and the average nursing assistant and the average physician and all of these occupations, right? You can just, and so you can get all of the average median wages for all these professions in every single county and metro area in the country. North Alabama, of all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of of counties and metros in the country, Alabama is literally among the bottom. North Alabama, the Huntsville metro area, is literally among the bottom 20. I was shocked because I had always heard about it. I have friends who are nurses. And actually left and went to California so that they could be paid enough. And we know that the cost of living is significantly higher in California. And so the fact that they were able to still come out ahead in California with their wages and everything, I think speaks to how little Huntsville Hospital pays their employees. And so federal and state regulators could do something about this. The Federal Trade Commission has the authority to challenge the acquisition and give the public more visibility into the effects that it would have. The Alabama Attorney General's office could also challenge the deal, right? If they didn't want to challenge the deal, if they didn't want to stop it, then they could at least ensure that workers, patients, and the community received an ironclad and public commitment from Huntsville Hospital to neither raise prices nor lower wages. The city council, which appoints all of the board that governs Huntsville Hospital, could also make this mandatory, right? The city council could come out and say, we are going to remove every single person from the governing board of Huntsville Hospital until there is a ironclad, black and white contract with the community to say we are not going to lower wages. In fact, we're going to raise wages because we are so exploiting nurses right now and healthcare professionals in the Huntsville area. We're not just going to not lower wages. We're going to raise wages to be able to push this deal through. We're not going to raise prices. We're actually going to lower prices for the community to push this bill through, right? The city council could do that, I think, because the city council is the one that appoints the governing boards for the whole thing, right? So unfortunately, though, I'm going to say that I do not have much confidence in the interest of these agencies, the Federal Trade Commission under Donald Trump, the Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall, to want to check corporate power. I also don't have a whole lot of confidence in the Huntsville City Council to do that either. So My final message is that the task is left to the workers. Nurses in New Orleans and all over the country are organizing with National Nurses United and other nurses unions to check corporate greed, to fight for better pay, to fight for safe staffing levels and commitments to their community. And NNU, the National Nurses United, they're not just fighting, they are winning in contract after contract, week after week, in hospitals in the South. I mean, y'all listen to the program. You hear our strike and bargaining updates in last week in Southern Labor. National Nurses United is winning almost every week a contract with nurses in the South that provides for safer staffing levels, provides for checks against hospitals who want to degrade staffing levels, provides for higher wages, provides for community commitments, stronger safety protocols to protect against violence against healthcare professionals, right? They're not just fighting, they're winning. Not only across the country in places where you would think of unions winning, like in New York or California, but right here in the South, and yes, in Florida, in New Orleans, in Texas. So nurses in Alabama can do it too. If workers at Huntsville Hospital are concerned about the effects that this acquisition could have on their working conditions and their patients' healing conditions, then they are gonna have to organize. I mean, that's the long and short of it. And it's a bummer because we should be able, to rely on the government that is specifically, government agencies that are specifically created to check corporate power. They should do their job. The Federal Trade Commission, the Alabama Attorney General's office. They should check corporate power. They should protect workers and communities and patients. But they're probably not gonna. So it's going to be up to the workers. And so if workers want to organize in Huntsville Hospital, the unions of North Alabama are ready to help them. I know because I am on the board of the Regional Federation of Unions in North Alabama. You can reach out to North Alabama's unions at contact@northalabamalabour.org. That is contact@northalabamalabour.org, and your email will go to a union member who is ready and prepared to help nurses at Huntsville Hospital or Crestwood start the process of building a fighting union that can stand up for you and stand up for your patients. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number if you'd like to call in. If you would like to leave us a written note, we would love to hear from you. Are you a worker? If you're a worker at Huntsville Hospital and you don't want to organize or you're not quite sure about it, we would still love to hear from you if you have any thoughts on what it's like working at Huntsville Hospital or Crestwood. Are you a recent patient of Huntsville Hospital? How was it? What was it like? Do you think it'll be better or worse with with them becoming a total monopoly? TVLR.fm/contact. You can give us your thoughts there. TVLR.fm/contact or give us a call, 844-899-TVLR. We do have a caller on the line, this one from a 256 area code. Well, let's go ahead and bring them on the air. 256 area code, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Stacy George calling from Arab, Alabama.
Stacy George, thanks for calling in, running for governor. And I have got, by the way, I don't want you to think that I'm ignoring you. I just haven't been able to, I haven't reached out to folks yet to start like candidate interviews, but I have it on my list to reach out and schedule interviews, not only with you, but with a lot of the other candidates that are running. Just figured we would do it a little bit closer to the elections, but I appreciate you calling in, and I'm assuming you've got some thoughts on this acquisition, so I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I've got inside actually information on this. Back in 2014, I ran. Now, I'm not actually a candidate yet. I'm seeking the petition, 43,000 signatures to be able to get ballot access. And it's not really looking good, honestly. I'm being honest. We're looking at other, and I haven't told no one yet. This is the first time this comes out. But we're looking at other options in the event I don't get enough there. What I'm considering doing next week is go ahead and get now that qualifying's closed Friday, I'm going to go ahead and start trying to seek petitions to get the House District 27 as an independent. I only have to have 495 signatures to do that. So I'm going to try to secure ballot access. So try to get to Montgomery regardless. And if I don't get the governor petitions, at least I can qualify to run as an independent for State House District 27. So that's option B. So that's where I'm at. But let me tell you something. I was a correction officer, and of course, you know, the Alabama Solution just won the Academy Award nomination yesterday, you know, the nominee. So they're in the running for it. They just announced that, and I did a lot of press stuff yesterday. But listen, I was working as a correction officer at Crestwood and Huntsville Hospital almost for the 13 and a half years. I probably worked the hospital duty probably as much as anybody else. And this is what I noticed. When we work at Crestwood, we had one group of people. We had Huntsville Hospital, which was really, I determined that if I was really going to do something, I would go to Huntsville Hospital if I had a heart condition. That's what I thought, because I've seen so many inmates go in, and they were, the heart center was just amazing there. But I could see that at times I would feel like the people at Crestwood was a little bit more personable. And I think that's because at that time they were private type. But let me tell you something. I heard this morning, I was listening, I said, this is disturbing. I had a big meeting with David Spillers. At the time, he was CEO. I don't even know who's the person at Huntsville. He may still be there. Good guy. We were talking about Medicaid expansion when I was running for governor in 2014, early on, or 2018. But I was talking to him about why, you know, as a Republican, everybody's like, we don't want to do Medicaid expansion. And you hear, we like that. And you just hear, yeah. I mean, you know what I mean from the Republican standpoint. But look, I've got so much to talk about, like within DOC, but we'll talk about the hospital. But look, I would go to both of them. But this is very troubling that we're looking at monopolizing. Yeah, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy to me, because we don't need more more monopolies. We need actually more competitors. Okay. And it's disturbing. You know, I'm listening. My wife's looking at me going, what are they talking about? And so this is the first I've heard of it. Maybe I'm just ignorant to it, but I'm thankful for y'all bringing this issue up, because Blue Cross Blue Shield, I bring that up all the time. We need competitors, a lot of competitors in healthcare to bring this cost down. So monopolizing this is a terrible, terrible mistake for North Alabama.
Stacey, George, appreciate your call, and I agree. And just on the quality of care, and thank you for your call. We'll continue the segment and look forward to talking to you again sometime. But you know, on the quality of care stuff. I'm not sure exactly why at one point Crestwood was better or Huntsville Hospital was better. You know, I mean, I'm not the type that thinks that government is always less efficient or does things better. And in fact, we can look at the TVA for an example of the government doing things better than the private sector, right? But Huntsville Hospital is, I'm not exactly clear on the structure of it. Is it a public corporation or whatever? But you know, I'm not totally clear on that, but I do know that the governing board is appointed by the Huntsville City Council. And so whatever that makes it is what it makes it, I suppose. But another thing from this was back in June of last summer. AL.com has a article titled "Huntsville Hospital Dismisses F grade on patient safety scorecard as not accurate." And so they say that, you know, that the Huntsville Hospital didn't complete the voluntary 353-page survey. But, you know, I mean, but this group, the Leapfrog Group, they're a national nonprofit, and they release grades on nearly 3,000 general acute care hospitals nationwide based on primarily information from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services records. And this is crazy. I mean, so Huntsville Hospital got an F, but that doesn't really kind of give you an idea of how bad it was. So here's something to kind of help you understand how bad this was. Huntsville Hospital has a higher death rate among patients with serious post-surgical complications like pneumonia, heart attack, or loss of kidney and liver function. In the best-performing hospitals, only 85 out of every 1,000 patients who suffer those complications die. That number for Huntsville Hospital was 222. per 1,000 patients. That's like 3 times the rate of the best hospitals. The literal worst performing hospital among this group of 3,000 hospitals nationwide, that number was 236. So, statistically, Huntsville Hospital was basically the worst performing hospital on this metric. I mean, that is crazy. That is just so concerning. And do we think that Huntsville Hospital is going to get better on these issues if they have zero competition? Are they going to get better if they have zero competition? My kind of guess is no, right? Is no. I don't think so. And obviously, this is not to say that the professionals and the nurses and the physicians, that this is their fault, right? I mean, I hear a lot of horror stories from Huntsville Hospital about, low wages, overstaffing, not enough training, right? And so, when you put people in situations like that, mistakes are going to happen, and mistakes are going to happen more often. But that's just another reason to be that Huntsville, for the regulators, for the city council, for the attorney general, for the Federal Trade Commission to sign off on this and allow this to happen, Huntsville Hospital must make ironclad commitments and really show their work that they're not going to make things worse, because things are already not good. I don't know, Adam, I've kind of gone on along, but 844-899-TVLR is the phone number. Do you have any I went a lot longer on this segment than I thought I would, but there's a lot to say. What are your thoughts on this?
No, I thought you were spitting, man. I really appreciate those comments. I did want to mention something. You brought up that the Huntsville City Council had an interesting meeting other night, and I thought that was kind of connected to this because you shared with me, you learned that the Huntsville City Council had a little kerfuffle other night where they had someone speak and someone used the curse word. The police escorted them out. The crowd was not having that. And so then the police escorted everyone out of the chambers. Is that my understanding? Is that right,
yes.
Jacob?
Yeah, I did watch it. It was pretty funny there. There's definitely a lot of tension in the room, but there was like zero interest from the city council president, Jenny Robinson, in trying to de-escalate. I mean, she immediately took it, she immediately tried to escalate the situation. It was pretty funny.
Right. And just to connect that, I think surely you have more important things to be worried about, right? I think as a public official, you have to be willing to have thick skin, and you're going to have angry citizens sometimes. And, God forbid they use a curse word. I mean, I wouldn't advise a citizen do that in a comment period, but, it's going to happen. But my point being, they have much more important matters before them. And I think you're correct to point out that there are various agencies and regulators here who could have a say, should have a say, but most importantly, the workers have to organize. And I think that's really, really the key lesson here is that without worker power, things just happen to us, right? And that's why we organize.
And I'm not saying, look, this is a union radio program. I'm a union member. I'm an elected union official. And so, there are probably people that are like, he thinks unions are the answer for everything. But when every other institution and guardrail and shield against corporate exploitation of workers and the community fail or refuse to do their job, yes, workers are the last line of defense. I mean, really, they're the first line of defense. They're the only reason. Workers organizing are the only reason that we have any of these institutions and shields and guardrails in the first place, right? And so when they start to fail, workers must reassert themselves as the drivers of the economy, as the people who make everything work. Sometimes workers have to remind bosses, corporations, and politicians of that fact. So if nurses at Huntsville Hospital want to talk to me more about that, contact at northalabamalabor.org. We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Today on the program, we just talked about Huntsville Hospital attempting to buy its only competitor in Huntsville. If you missed that conversation, you can find the stream on Facebook and YouTube and go back and watch that. We're about to be talking to a Chattanooga stagehand about the importance of the union and the work that they do in the city of Chattanooga. We will also be taking a look at a recent segment on Fox News about what the president could be doing instead of saber rattling and starting war. We're going to be talking about all that and more. If you've got any thoughts on it, you can give us a call. The phones are open right now, 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm. But we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. A huge portion of our funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or just make a one-time donation, you can go to patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report or tvlr.fm/donate. We've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then think about getting your local, your district council, or your international to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
There you go. Let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. And we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. As most of you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class here in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or a first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us today.
With that, let's get to last week in Southern labor. Here is what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to from January 16th to 23rd. All across the South, 489 workers in 7 bargaining units have gone public with their union campaigns. 9 workers in 1 bargaining unit unionized, and 47 workers across 3 bargaining units withdrew their petition for a union election. Here are the details. In new union campaigns, 7 workers at Crumbs and Whiskers in Washington, D.C. filed a petition to hold a union election with the Workers United Mid-Atlantic Regional Joint Board. 182 workers at Ace Hardware Corporation in Plant City, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW, Local 1625. 23 workers at APAC Bricky's Stone in Bloomsdale, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Union of Operating Engineers, IUOE, Local 513. 20 workers at BW Industrial in Louisville, Kentucky, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers, IUBAC. 30 workers at Specs Family Partners in Galveston, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 988. 65 workers at Technica in Jacksonville, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW, and 162 security guards at Garda World Security Services in Moncks Corner, South Carolina, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Security Police and Fire Professionals of America, SPFPA. In election results, 2 workers at Avis Rent-A-Car in Louisville, Kentucky withdrew their petition for a union election with the Teamsters, Local 89. 4 workers at Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C. withdrew their petition with the District of Columbia Nurses Association, DCNA. 9 workers at Centerpoint Energy, Texas gas operations in Huntsville, Texas, voted 7-2 in favor of unionization with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 2286, and the employer withdrew a petition for a union election among 41 workers who had previously demonstrated majority support for unionization at Breakthrough Beverage in St. Louis, Missouri, with the Teamsters, Local 600. In grievances, unfair labor practices, and court cases, construction workers can finally get back to work after Trump fired them. Last week, 3 judges in 3 separate cases, including a Trump appointee, said the Trump administration had not met its burden of proof to demonstrate that somehow offshore wind projects represent a national security risk. That is why, you may remember, that he said he abruptly canceled the projects, killing thousands of jobs, many of them union. So the federal courts lifted the administration's stop work orders on the projects, one of which is in Virginia. North America's building trade unions applauded the court decision. In their statement, they said, with energy demand surging and prices spiking, the last thing our government should do is take any form of power generation offline. These rulings mean our members can get back to work and keep affordable, clean, reliable power moving to our communities. In strikes and bargaining updates, these Kentucky journalists have a union contract for the first time ever. Workers at the Courier-Journal, the state's paper of record, voted overwhelmingly in favor of unionization with the News Guild nearly 4 years ago and have been organizing in the face of employer opposition since then. Last week, they capped off that organizing by ratifying a contract with the company, the first in the paper's history. The contract includes stronger workplace protections, expanded parental leave, and wage increases. Reacting to the contract ratification, Josh Wood, a reporter at the Courier-Journal, said, "Every day our newsroom produces reporting that is critical for our neighbors, our city, and Kentucky as a whole. This contract ensures they are doing important work with more workplace protections and better pay." Air traffic controllers are preparing for contract negotiations. Flight service specialists who provide critical weather and safety information to pilots in Reston, Virginia, and Fort Worth, Texas, are getting ready for bargaining with their employer, Leidos, a federal contractor. Unionized with the International Association of Machinists, IAM Local 2010, the workers' primary objectives in bargaining include higher wages, maintaining their strong health care, and more. City workers in Austin, Texas, won a historic victory, getting the city council to pass a policy requiring management to consult with the City Workers Union, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME Local 1624, before making any changes that would impact city staff. Austin is the first city in the state of Texas to enact such a policy, going against the grain in a state that tries to depress worker power. In political, and also, the National Association of Letter Carriers are beginning their preparations for contract negotiations, calling for all local branches to hold a Fight Like Hell rally on February 22nd to support a fair contract as they go into negotiations. In political and legislative updates, you didn't finish your homework. That's what rail regulators told Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern when they rejected these two companies' 7,000-page merger application. The Surface Transportation Board is going to give the companies another bite at the apple, though. They have 30 days to resubmit the application. Specifically, the board said there was no forward-looking analysis at market share projections. They may not have wanted to include that because if they did and were honest, what they are proposing would look like an anti-competitive monopoly. Raise prices and cut jobs like every other rail merger has. Most rail worker unions oppose the merger. And instead of the merger, Rail unions are fighting for safety protections for working people on the rails, including for train crews to have at least 2 people, as well as new legislation meant to address the East Palestine vent and burn failures. Nurses are fighting back against Trump's attempt to close their hospitals. The largest nurses union, National Nurses United, has put together a red alert campaign warning hundreds of community members nationwide that their hospitals face a drastic reduction in quantity and quality of healthcare services as a result of H.R. 1, the Republican budget bill that passed last year. Nurses' first stop on the Red Alert Tour will be Glendale, California on Saturday, January 24th, but they will also be going to Louisiana, where a hospital there has been put on the red alert list. In internal union affairs, the Union Plus Scholarship Program has been helping union members and their families afford college for 35 years. Applications are open for 2026 scholarships, and they close on January 31st. If you'd like to apply, you can visit unionplus.org and search scholarships. If you would like to get the exhaustive version of Last Week in Southern Labor, where we have many more updates, strikes and bargaining, grievances, court cases and unfair labor practices, and political and legislative updates, then subscribe to our newsletter. You will get it almost every week on Tuesday mornings. You can do that by going to tvlr.fm and subscribing to the newsletter. If we missed anything, though, let us know at tvlr.fm/contact. We should now have our stagehand on the line from Chattanooga. Really excited for this conversation. We're going to be talking to Nicole Price, the business agent for the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Local 140 in Chattanooga. Nicole, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Really excited to have you on the program. We like to do a segment every week where we just do a little, do a union profile. Let people know about the worker organizations that are in their communities and what they're doing. So can you talk, but before we get to that, can you talk a little bit, generally about why unions are important and what it's like being a leader of a union in the South?
For me, it is being an active participant in the betterment of our community through stability and economic confidence. I'm in a right-to-work state in the Southeast, and I see people struggle around me, and we barely make enough to get by, while particularly where I live, there are people moving in from much wealthier states, doing jobs with higher rates of pay, buying up all of the resources, and thusly making prices go up. So having an amount of control over what we're making and pushing that lower level up is really important to me personally.
Absolutely. I mean, it's hugely, hugely important. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing. The work that union leaders do is so thankless sometimes. And so yeah. I know that I really appreciate what you do. I know my co-host Adam, a member of IATSE Local 900 here in Huntsville, appreciates it as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about Local 140? What do your members do? Where do they work? What shows can people go to in town and feel confident that it's union crews putting them on? And how many are there? Lots of questions there, I know, but
no, that's okay. These are the general questions I answer to people all the time when they ask what I do. We're what's known as a mixed local in our industry. We represent people who work in live production theater, concerts. We do work in our local convention center, so we do trade shows and things like that. We also do outdoor festivals. If film comes through, it doesn't come through here very often, but if it comes through, we do partner with our film locals in our district to assist with that as well. So we do a little bit of everything. Wardrobe and hair as well. So some locals in other states have separate locals for all of these different crafts, but we do all of it. So here in town, we have contracts with the Tivoli Theater Foundation, which manages our major theaters here in town. They have Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Auditorium, the Walker Theater, the Tivoli, which is closed for renovations right now. We also have a contract with Marathon, which represents the booking for the Signal, which is a smaller local venue here. And most things that happen in our outdoors, which don't happen all the time, but usually annually, we have a bluegrass festival that we just signed a contract with for, I think, 3 years that we just did this past summer. And then we do some other random things around town that we don't necessarily have contracts for. They're a little bit more one-off. But if you go to anything at the Tivoli Theater Foundation buildings, that's all union.
That's fantastic. Love to hear that. Can you share a little bit of you mentioned that you've got contracts with a couple of different venues in town. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the details of those contracts? Like what are people making on these jobs, and people that are interested in stagehand work might be interested in that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So with our largest contract, the Tivoli Theater Foundation, we just negotiated this past summer to our first multi-year contract. It's 2 years, which was good. We've been going year to year for a long time now. Our base hand rate in those venues is $23 an hour. We do have overtime on Sundays, overtime between midnight and 8 a.m., which is time and a half for anybody who's not familiar. And then it goes up from there. Hair and specialty positions like hair, cobblers, stitchers make $25 an hour. And then for rigging and fly rail, the head rate is $36 an hour. The regular rig rate is $34 an hour. And then let's see, what else do we have? Then with our contract with Marathon, we have a base. We have some specialty rates for loaders. We kind of worked out some things. If you work in this industry, loaders is always a conversation point. So in that building, we have an hourly rate that we just negotiated from a flat rate. So they make $26 an hour. We have a special rate where we call them hand loaders. They're box truck hands. So if a vehicle is smaller than a certain size, they make a little bit more money, and they do both roles. And then in Marathon for the Signal, we have our base hand rate is $23 an hour. Most of the time people make $25 an hour because almost always that's going to be a smaller vehicle show. So we have them do both things and they make a little bit more money. And that's almost all we do. We do have some specialty rates for, like, on the occasion they have a spot op or a camera that makes a little bit more. But we don't really do rigging in that building. So.
Gotcha. And for people that aren't familiar with the lingo, a grievance is something that a union can file, or I guess an employer could file it, but over a violation of the contract. And so if somebody is being mistreated at work or something like that, a lot of times unions will file grievances and get resolutions on those, and a lot of times people can get their jobs back with back pay and stuff like that. I know that with smaller locals, grievances are a little bit less common, and locals like the stagehands or the building trades unions, stuff like that is just not really as common as if maybe the steel workers or the auto workers or unions like that. But has your union, how often are grievances filed in your local, and are there any that have been resolved recently that you're really proud of?
Yeah, not super frequently, but we have had cause to file grievances, and we actually just recently resolved a grievance that was filed by our employer. It actually worked out really well for everybody, I think. The grievances that we have filed from our side have been, usually it is related to what we feel like is a mistreatment of a worker. The example that comes to mind for me, it happened a few years ago, where during December, we don't have a lot of work, but there's a lot of nutcrackers. And so one of our long running shows, the technical director, basically the long and the short of it, he pitched a fit about something that we were not supposed to do within the rules. The person in question that he pitched the fit to came to the steward, who happened to be me, which is what you're supposed to do, and said, this is what we need to do. And I went to him and I said, okay, we're going to go ahead and do this, but this is how this is going to work. And this is, we'll grieve it later. And he basically just was like, it's fine, don't worry about it. So thought it was resolved. And then he suddenly sends an email that he's suspending this worker who did what they were supposed to do, from working for the rest of the month. So we filed a grievance. He got back pay. It established a rule for us where, he had to recognize more thoroughly the fact that the steward is on a an equal playing field with him in terms of authority, and that solutions are what we're looking for. So things got better in that way after that. So I think that's a really important process for both parties.
Absolutely, and I think that really goes back around to the thing that you said at the beginning, which is the stability and the ability to go into work and say, I've got a contract, and be able to read it yourself and know what's supposed to happen, and know that if something happens outside of that you can have an independent actor, the union, not an HR department, the HR department that works for the company and that ultimately, is designed to protect the company from lawsuits or whatever. They're not, the HR people are not designed to protect you. The union is there for you. The union is the workers. And so having this independent actor holding the company accountable to the contract that they've made, that's something that you're not going to get in a non-union company, being able to come off of a suspension with back pay because your company violated the company handbook. That doesn't happen. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. I'm really proud of the work that we put into going through that process. It's been really beneficial. It's a new thing for us in our local. We were kind of a good old boys club for a long time. And we restructured leadership several years ago and started taking advantage of those that ability. Like that was always a clause in our contract, but it was never one that was exercised until the last few years.
So, maybe there are people that are like business owners, or they're people that hear so much kind of propaganda about business owners and how business owners are, they're the best, and they've got to have the ability to kind of be free and have flexibility and not, and so, oh man, I've got to, if a business owner has to deal with a contract, maybe that makes their business less efficient or worse in some way. But you and I know that's not the case, and that actually having somebody hold the company accountable can be good for productivity and efficiency. But I'm curious, from your standpoint, why should venues go with union stagehands over non-union stagehands where they don't have to have a contract or be held accountable?
I think that from the perspective of employers, the big benefit is obviously its skill level is high, but the confidence of, especially in live production, tours coming through, they know what they're getting. They know that there's a standard that we're held to. And then frankly, from the employer's perspective too, it's off their plate. The entity contacts me, tells me what it is that they need, and then they're done. I take care of the rest of it. So, your responsibility goes down while still having the highest level of expertise. So, all benefits there. Contracts protect them too. So that's the other thing that I would always tell people. The contract protects the employer and the employee.
Absolutely. Adam, do you have any other questions for Nicole? I know that you being a stagehand, you might have some.
We work with Huntsville a lot. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Been a pleasure to work with some Chattanooga siblings on some shows in Huntsville area. But something I wanted to ask about would be how y'all protect around safety and working conditions, because something that I've noticed working in Local 900, is that we do take safety seriously, and I'm curious if you could speak to that in terms of the union difference.
Yeah, that's a great question, and honestly, it's something that we do have to really pay attention to, and I would say struggle with, because we work in old venues. Our two main theaters are right over 100 years old. So, wow. That presents its own set of special kind of circumstances. And so for us, we have a safety committee that we discuss these things with and report to if anybody sees anything. We've taken to really doing documentation a lot. So like, for example, if we go up to the pick rail, we're going to go up, and anybody who doesn't know, pick rail is a place where you have ropes that you pull stuff up so it's in the air and out of the way. But we always take videos of it before and after. So that way, if there's anything that's been mismanaged by the facility, then we know. And we try to work with the employers to address problems when we see like a handrail that's loose, or recently on that same pick rail, there's like a metal grating and it had come loose. And so we try to work with the company to resolve those things as we see them. It's not always possible, but we try. other than that, it's just staying in communication, I think, making sure that we're communicating with workers when there is kind of like a weird circumstance so that we know, because we know our venues very well. But if you get somebody new to rigging, for example, they might not know the ins and outs and parts of like the grid that they're working in. So communication is key in my opinion.
So, Nicole, if there's stagehands at other venues in East Tennessee that hear this interview and maybe they would like to unionize their venue, or maybe somebody wants to get their start as a stagehand and wants to join Local 140, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so the best way is to go to our website, which is local140.rocks. There is a link there to register to work with us, and that puts you in touch with me directly. And so I'll reach out. We always love to have experienced people, but I learned how to do this on the job. It's a really good way to get some side work and learn a new skill at the same time. So anybody who's looking to work, please register there. If you're just looking to communicate about about organizing your own venue or area, my direct email address is business agent. That's BUSSINESSAGENT at local140.rocks.
Nicole Price is the business agent for IATSE Local 140, the union for stagehands in Chattanooga and East Tennessee. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
We're going to take a break, folks. We will be right back. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communications system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you are tuning in online, go ahead and like the stream, subscribe to the channel, or give us 5 stars if you're listening as a podcast. We're coming up on the end of the first half of the program, but we got a great second half lined up for you. We're going to be talking to one of the workers that beat RFK Jr. and got all of their co-workers reinstated at the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. Incredibly exciting story there. We'll be talking to them, and we will be talking to a resident of Minnesota about the general strike that happened there yesterday. But before we do that, we've got some other stuff that we wanted to talk about. And we got a question in the chat. Union Gus asked, what does Adam usually do as a stagehand? I know that, Adam, you responded in the chat, but maybe there are some other people that are listening that are interested in that.
Sure, yeah. In Huntsville, we are very similar to Chattanooga. We're mixed local, which means we have folks who do a little bit of everything. From truck loaders to the riggers who climb up in the rafters and deal with the ropes and chains. Also, spotlight operators, hair, makeup, wardrobe. I am just a basic hand, which is kind of your entry-level position, which means on any given rock concert or Broadway Theater League production or similar show, I could be doing a mix of basic lighting, video, audio. So like the big video walls that you see at a lot of concerts, we put those together. The lights, we hang those lights. And so there's a lot of box pushing, unloading the truck, getting everything set up. And then of course you come back at night and break it all down. And so I didn't know anything about stagehand work when I got into it. I told them up front, like I could barely hold a wrench. I could write a hell of a grievance if they needed help with that. Knew a lot about unions, but not a lot about the stagehand work. And so they showed me the ropes, literally, in this case. And it's been a pleasure to work with folks. And, as I mentioned in the chat, I've gotten to work some really cool productions. Some of my favorite musicians I've seen come through the Orion Amphitheater, Robert Plant, Modest Mouse, Neil Young. And so to get to work on something like that is really cool. It's a really, interesting kind of job. Every gig's a little bit different. And I've seen some really amazing sets from the Broadway Theater League, like Les Mis, and we had Back to the Future musical recently, and that was a huge production. So it's a cool job. It's a fun job. It's hard work, and it can be really cold, really hot, depending on the weather, obviously, here in Alabama or wherever you're at. But it's, certainly a pleasure to do it with union protections. And I appreciated hearing about some of that from Nicole in Chattanooga. As I mentioned in the chat, we also have some protections in terms of premium pay after midnight, as well as after 8 hours on a gig. And we have mandatory breaks. And I think that is really, really important because when you're doing physical labor in the elements, you need breaks, right? We've seen politicians across the South resist basic heat standards and water breaks, right? Like, so it's important that you have those kind of protections. And yeah, that's a little bit about what we do. And so any cool production coming through the Huntsville area, that's IATSE Local 900. And as you heard earlier, Local 140 out of Chattanooga doing very similar work up in their neck of the woods. So if you're interested in getting your foot in the door in the industry, some people just do this as a side job at home, which is what I do. I don't typically go on the road. But we've got a lot of people who do go on the road, who work in various locals, Birmingham, Huntsville, Chattanooga, Nashville. And of course, we have folks who go on tour. And that is an option for folks, especially if you want to make a living doing this full time and you want to make a lifestyle out of it. You can go on the road and travel with the production. So there's a lot of opportunities there. You can specialize. But yeah, it's cool work. It's cool to make these productions happen and make people happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does seem like a really, really fun job. I'm sure, like many fun sounding or looking jobs, it can get old after a bit, but but it is cool to get to see some of your favorite artists. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857 if you'd like to call in. We got this clip from Fox News where Faz Shakur, former campaign manager, I think he was, for Bernie Sanders, also the executive director or something like that for More Perfect Union. Really cool guy. He was on, and he goes on these, cable news things a pretty good bit. And they were talking about they were talking a little bit about the rise in independence in the country. And I thought something about the segment was strange because of how shocked the anchor pretended to be. It was weird. The rise of independence has been a story like all the time over the last 10 or 15 years. So it's not a new thing, but it did hit a slightly newer high over the last few weeks. And so that was kind of the premise of the conversation. And just like Bernie Sanders, Faz Shakur attempted and was really, and the anchor didn't like it. It's funny, it's Fox News, right? But they attempted to bring the conversation to real potential policy solutions to the problems that the American people are facing. And you can see that the anchor wasn't hearing any of it. The anchor wanted to just talk horse race politics and like, oh, what do these numbers mean or whatever. They didn't want to talk about the policy solutions, but admirable attempt by Faz. Let's play clip 3.
I think Elizabeth Warren is right that the greatest problem of our time is that in the richest country in the world, we have great wealth and income inequality, and the poor are getting poorer. We've cut Medicaid from them. We've cut housing assistance from them. We've cut the ACA subsidies from them. We've made AI come for their jobs. The question is, can we put solutions on the table that improve the lives of these working class people? And every day, I think there's opportunities. You see a Tyson plant closure in Lexington, Nebraska right now, 5% of American beef production going away. Instead of going after Greenland and running Greenland, how about you go and run a Tyson's plant and save those jobs?
Well, we can put that on the list as well again. We'll add it to it.
Yeah, so there you go. The anchor was like, oh, no. We don't want to talk about real issues. We want to talk about polls. We got to talk about polls. We can't talk about the fact that 5%, and I didn't realize this until Faz said it, but I looked a little bit more into it. More Perfect Union has a really great video about the plant closure in Nebraska. But this plant closure by Tyson's in Nebraska is going to eliminate 5% of domestic beef production. So that seems to me like a more pressing issue than Greenland or Venezuela. None of these countries are doing anything to impact people's lives, generally speaking. They're certainly not hurting us, right? They're just there. They're just existing. Tyson's is actually actively destroying an entire community. They're pulling out of this community, Lexington, Nebraska, that has a total population of 10,000 people, and this employer employs 3,000 people. So more than half of the town literally works there. Half of the people that can work do work at Tyson's. They're going to destroy this town, and if we want to talk about national security implications to domestic economic policy, relying 5% more based on the closure of one plant on imported beef, as much as an economic issue can be a national security issue, that is one, right? I mean, if you give another country 5% more leverage over the domestic American consumer beef market, that's something that can be wielded as a weapon, just like Trump is doing with all of the other countries in the world, right? And so countries can do the same thing to us, but this kind of thing that affects little people in Lexington, Nebraska, these people, literally thousands of people losing their jobs in one fell swoop. And also, the More Perfect Union video points out, and all the articles that I've read about it, attest to this. Not because the plant is not profitable. The plant is profitable. The plant makes money. The plant makes lots of money. It's just not lots and lots and lots of money, right? The Tysons can make a little bit more money by importing beef that is grown by cattle farmers and processed by workers in other countries who make less than American workers. But it's not like they're losing money in Lexington, Nebraska right now. They're importing because they can make a little bit more money. And they're destroying this town. And they're also going to put the rest of the country at a little bit more risk of rising beef prices and fluctuations in the global market. And so why isn't, instead of focusing on Venezuela or Greenland, why isn't Donald Trump coming in and telling Tyson, well, actually, you can't close it? Or maybe he says, fine, well, we're going to nationalize Tysons. The government is going to run Tysons. Just like the TVA runs electricity in the Tennessee Valley, the government can run Tysons. And then we can actually begin to have competition in the beef processing market again. Right? Because right now, Tysons and like 3 other companies have 90% of the beef market, and they do it regionally so that they don't have to compete with one another. And so if the government takes over Tysons and we have sort of a public option for beef production, well, then you can have something that these other companies can compete with, and you can actually begin to introduce competition into the beef market. Or maybe if you don't want the government to run it, you can give the workers the opportunity to buy the facility backed by a government loan and allow the workers to run it as a cooperative. And cooperatives are very successful. You look at Mondragon in, I think it's Italy. One of the largest, or the largest cooperative corporation in the world. Very, very productive. Very good to their workers. Cooperatives actually have a higher longevity than non-cooperative businesses. They tend to weather economic downturns better. And like we were talking about with the Chattanooga stagehand, they give workers a little bit more security and stability, because if the workers own the factory instead of these big international multi-billion-dollar corporations, it's the workers who get to make the decision, is this working or not? Is this something that's profitable enough for us or not? Right? Are we going to close the plant or are we not? That's something that the workers could decide. And since the plant is profitable anyways, why should this multi-billion-dollar international corporation get to say to an American town that is making it money, right? I want to keep hitting that. Making Tysons millions, billions of dollars. Why does Tysons get to come in and say, we're going to completely destroy your economy. We're going to completely uproot your lives, take away your jobs, endanger the American consumer? Why should they get to do that? Why shouldn't the workers have the opportunity to run the corporation themselves, or the government, or somebody else? Right? And so, I think that really goes to show what Donald Trump's, where his focus is. It's not on American workers. And we've got an article here, a blog from the president of the steelworkers talking a little bit more about this. He talks about how under the Biden administration, the federal government's historic investments in infrastructure, advanced manufacturing, and cutting-edge industries galvanized demand for American-made materials and goods, including the taconite that Toby and fellow members of the United Steelworkers produce for steel. Cliff Toby is a union miner in Minnesota's Iron Range, who only a few years ago won significant wage increases and looked confidently to the future amid a thriving manufacturing economy. The Steelworkers Union talks about how employers invested in new factories, expanded existing ones, and created more than 700,000 manufacturing jobs across the country. But upon returning to office a year ago, Donald Trump deliberately derailed the boom and imposed an economic agenda driven by vendetta, not the American worker. He talks about how Trump cut job-creating projects just to punish people, places, and ideas that he disliked. Weaponizing sanctions to retaliate against countries and world leaders that annoy him for any reason. There's a lot of reporting talking about the reason that we did that to Venezuela was just because of Maduro's dances. It has now resulted in the layoffs of hundreds of Iron Range miners and 70,000 lost factory jobs nationwide. 70,000 fewer factory workers today than a year ago when Trump took office. Everything that he has done to make an impact on the economy has made things worse for the American worker. And so, this article, it's really good, and I recommend folks reading it. The title is "This is What Spite Gets Us" by David McCall, the international president of the United Steelworkers. And it's just, it's not partisan, it's just facts, right? Talking about killing funding that was already allocated under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. That has caused companies to scale back expansions, to stop plant openings, or to pause them or even eliminate them altogether. He has an example of Core Power, who was planning a $1.2 billion lithium battery plant in Arizona that would have created thousands of jobs and helped make the nation a leader in an emerging industry. But officials in California continued scrambling for a way forward after Trump axed a $1.2 billion hydrogen hub intended to boost energy independence and economic growth. Core Power canceled that $1.2 billion project, canceled thousands of jobs. He also pulled tens of millions of dollars of support for Libby Glass in Toledo, Ohio. And that callousness, McCall says, sidetracked a carefully planned initiative aimed at boosting employment and ensuring the plant's competitiveness. Just example after example of companies stopping expansions, closing altogether, or pausing plans because of Trump's policies. It's very concerning. It's very concerning that there is not only is there no sign of progress, there is sign of backsliding. And it's something that we should be concerned about. And, stories like this, particularly the Tyson's plant in Nebraska, illustrates the importance of worker power, not just union power, but ownership, so that workers are actually the people that get to make these final decisions about, are we going to open this plant or not? Are we going to pause these plans, right? It shouldn't just be bosses that get to make these decisions when it's the workers who actually do the work and make the economy run. Adam, I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to add to that, but
No, I thought you hit it. I think there are opportunities, like policy wise, right? that's something you brought up, and he brought up in the Fox News clip as well. Like, why don't we have a policy that before these companies close these big facilities, that they have to have this opportunity, right? That workers have the opportunity. We have employee-owned poultry industry right here in Alabama, right? Like, it's not that foreign of a concept. It totally could be done. And so I think it's important, as we mentioned earlier with the hospital, like, workers themselves have to organize, but yeah, I think you're right. There are limits even to what a collective bargaining agreement can do. And we have to keep pushing. And I know we're going to talk later about some other stories that kind of hit on that as well.
Yeah. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that in the second half of the program. Boss Watch today is going to be a little bit different because there are no new press releases from the EEOC, the Department of Labor, the Wage and Hour Division, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And, that all goes to the evidence that the Trump administration, we just talked about how the Trump administration doesn't care that 5% of domestic beef manufacturing, 5% of the domestic beef output is going to be gone. Thousands of jobs are going to leave a small Nebraska town, destroying its economy. He doesn't care about any of that. He also doesn't care about workers being stolen from, bosses killing workers on the job, subjecting them to unsafe working conditions, workers being discriminated against and harassed. And we can see that by the fact that there are fewer and fewer and fewer instances of enforcement of laws that protect workers. Right? I mean, we've talked a few times about how this recent Good Jobs First report has come out showing that 80%, the wage and hour cases are 80% lower than they were under the Biden administration. Health and safety cases are 40% lower, right? And so, that is a data that goes to what we are seeing week to week, where there are fewer and fewer of these stories of federal agencies protecting workers. So because of that, I figured we could talk just a couple of minutes about wage theft and how pernicious it is across the economy, and what it is to start with, right? Because it's not as though bosses are literally going into your bank account and stealing it, or stealing money literally out of people's back pockets. It's a little bit more subtle than that. Adam, can you, when wage theft happens, can you talk about mechanically how that typically happens?
Sure. Sometimes it's withholding benefits, right? Like, making you work through a break. Sometimes it's not being paid overtime when you were supposed to be paid overtime. Sometimes it's working off the clock. And there's time at the beginning and time at the end off the clock that you're doing work. So it, like you said, it's not as straightforward as some kind of theft. But what it boils down to is that something you have already worked for is being withheld, right? And often it goes unreported because people aren't aware, or because they fear retaliation. And there is a lot of this out there. It's very subtle, but it's one of the most costly crimes in America.
The Economic Policy Institute has done research about this by doing surveys of working people, and what the research indicates is that the actual amount of back wages recovered by federal regulators, federal law enforcement officials, or state and local law enforcement is significantly smaller than the genuine scope of the crime. And so by survey results and stuff like that, the estimated actual total of wage theft is larger than all other property theft combined. Right? You take all of the burglaries that happen in the country, all of the vehicle thefts, all of the bank robberies in the country, you combine them, and that number is smaller than the amount of money that bosses steal from workers by not paying them what they're due, by not paying them the federal minimum wage or the state or the local minimum wage, or not meeting the Davis-Bacon wage and hour requirements on federal construction projects, or not meeting overtime requirements, paying you time and a half after 40 hours in a work week, stuff like that. All
withholding
things,
tips.
Avoiding
That's
tips,
a big
stealing
one.
tips. Sometimes they actually do. They just steal tips from you.
Right. That really does happen. I mean, asking you to make work-related purchases, right, that you don't get reimbursed for, or misclassification. To your point about Davis-Bacon, and there's a lot of misclassification out there of workers. There are folks who get 1099s who should be W-2 employees. There's all the kinds of ways that this manifests, but like you said, there's a lot of research out there. And we know the scale of this is massive, and it adds up. It adds up over time.
And that's why it's bad that the Trump administration is not enforcing the law. Folks, that's it for the first half of the program. Find us on Facebook, YouTube to continue watching. If you don't do that, we appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week. All right, we're off the radio. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We're really excited for the second half of the show. We got a couple of great guests lined up. We're going to be talking to one of the workers that defeated RFK Jr. I mean, I love saying that. It's so cool being able to say that you got all of your coworkers. The federal government wanted to fire you and everybody else that you worked with, and not only did they not succeed totally, they failed totally. They wanted to fire everybody. In the end, as of last week, they fired nobody. Super exciting. Really excited to talk to the worker about this story. We're also going to be talking to folks in Minnesota about what's going on in there. Getting word that ICE shot another person today in Minneapolis. Unclear about the status of that person, if they're dead or alive at this point, but maybe we'll have a little bit more information when our guest comes on about the status of that. But the general strike that happened in Minneapolis yesterday should give people cause for hope, and so looking forward to talking about that. Stay tuned, folks. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. We'll be right back with Overtime.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people in the South and all over the country. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to call in, the phone number is 844-899-8857. That is 844-899-TVLR. The lines are open. If you're not listening to us live, you can call and leave us a voicemail at the same number at any time. You can also send us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. We've got there's a huge story out of Pennsylvania that we haven't really kept up with. I mean, I've been kind of seeing a little bit here and there about it, but it's about the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and how the workers there have gone on strike, and they have been fighting this company for years now. Adam, can you and the recent is that the company, in response to the workers winning in court and the court saying to the company, you've got to give these strikers, you've got to allow these strikers to come back on their job, and you've got to reinstate the contract that you illegally terminated. You've got to reinstate the contract that you illegally terminated. Instead of doing that, they have said, we're going to just close the paper altogether. And so this is another episode illustrating the importance of worker power, not just union power, but worker ownership of companies, because if the workers owned the paper, obviously they wouldn't be deciding to close it. And so we're going to talk about all of that. It's going to be a little bit shorter of a segment, but Adam, I gave the latest, but can you give us a little bit more detailed chronology of how we got here?
Yeah. So, I mean, we got here with a strike that started back in October of 2022, if you can believe it, right? A long drawn out battle here. The editorial workers at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette are members of the Newspaper Guild of Pittsburgh, which is a CWA affiliate. And as you mentioned, the latest update here is that the company has decided to close the newspaper after defying multiple court orders. The NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, has just filed contempt charges against them this past week on January 20th. And it's basically because they've defied court orders to restore the workers' contractual, collectively bargained healthcare plan. And the company illegally scrapped that plan back in July of 2020, right? So even though the strike started October 2022, this has really been going on even longer. And so they went out on strike in fall of 22. They were demanding that the company restore the terms of the union contract that it had illegally discarded, of course, including healthcare. And it's been, a long drawn out battle in the courts over the years. And but the workers have been prevailing in court following some other legal defeats. Back in March of 2025, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals enjoined the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette to restore the healthcare. And so the company had actually falsely claimed, both in court and to employees, that the healthcare plan no longer existed, which is pretty wild. The union says that it does, and it did. And on November 10th, so just a couple of months ago, right before Thanksgiving, the court did order the company to restore all the requested terms of the contract. It updated that March injunction on the healthcare. The company, of course, requested an emergency stay. They tried to get help from the U.S. Supreme Court back in December. The NLRB, the Newspaper Guild of Pittsburgh, and the U.S. Solicitor General all put in comments. The Supreme Court request was denied. And then within hours of that denial, the newspaper had their emergency meeting. And that's when they were shown a pre-recorded video of the executive telling them that the paper was closing on May 3rd. So this was a Zoom where it was a pre-recorded message. There was no live Q&A or nothing like that. And ironically, it's closing on May 3rd, which is World Press Freedom Day. The newspaper is refusing to offer the health plan. And so that's where we're at now. It's if the Third Circuit finds the Post-Gazette in contempt, it has 14 days from that ruling to comply. It can then be fined $100,000 and an additional $5,000 for each additional day it flouts the order. And it also applies to the general manager as well as any other, company representative who may violate the order. So it's really messy. It's gotten really messy there. There are some controversies happening with some of the employees of the newspaper. The employees who either joined the company after the strike already started, right? So they crossed the picket line to effectively be scab journalists, or people who never actually went out on strike in the first place. So those folks were still working for the Post-Gazette while the rest of these colleagues were out on strike. Well, now some of them, of course, feel some type of way that the paper's closing. Some of them are actually clamoring for new union elections and are saying that, they want a new leadership change in the Pittsburgh News Guild. The union is saying basically, hey, you're not dues paying members. So what the hell are you talking about? Just to summarize it. And so that's kind of where we're at with it. There is an effort to support basically post-Gazette journalism in Pittsburgh. So the union has put out an Action Network petition, basically pledging to support an alternative to the block-owned Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And so, they're trying to build their list. They're trying to figure out ways to, make sure that there's not a news desert in Pittsburgh. Because that's some of the other things that, other folks have brought up. There was an interesting article from The Conversation that talked about basically how bad this is for democracy, right? It's not just bad for these workers, but it's bad for democracy that we're losing a critical newsroom. And that's going to have a detrimental impact on, local community participation and just democratic participation, civic engagement, all of that. So, there's that angle to it. But, as you mentioned earlier, and I wanted your opinions on this, to me, this case is a case where we can see where current labor law just really isn't enough, right? The company faced repeated legal defeats. It still defied court orders without immediate automatic consequences.
Right.
And the NLRB contempt filing showed up, but that was after they announced they're closing the company, right? So there's these long judicial timelines and enforcement actions that are pretty weak. It's slow and cumbersome. And the companies, they weaponize these delays and they use these delays to drive a historic newsroom to shut its doors. Even after the union won on paper. So, that's what I kind of want to do to talk about a little bit was, given how all this unfolded, where does that leave us, right? We have labor victories on paper, but it failed to protect the workers in practice. And so, is it time to kind of push beyond collective bargaining and look at worker control and worker ownership models? And what does that look like for the labor movement?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it is just another illustration of the limitations of the current labor law. I mean, the idea that you can have a 6-year-long fight with a company that repeatedly loses in court, flagrantly violates the law without any sort of consequences, and whether or not you think that I think that this really demonstrates the need for worker ownership and control of the companies, that the people who sit at the top of these institutions by virtue of having a lot of money just have forfeited their right to run these companies. They have demonstrated themselves to be irresponsible stewards of capital. and so, we just have to take it away, I think. But even if you don't think that it demonstrates that, it must at least demonstrate the complete brokenness of labor law in this country, that a corporation could be allowed to so flagrantly violate the law. We have to talk about real penalties for breaking labor law. We have to talk about fines, criminal penalties, and ownership penalties. Maybe at some point, you could have penalties in the law that say, look, if you continue to violate your workers' rights, then you have to sell your company, and you don't get to be one of the potential buyers. And the people who have the right of first refusal are the workers, and they can have access to a government-backed loan. I want to talk some more about this in a second, but I think that we've got our guest on the line, and I don't want to keep them waiting. So we're going to come back to this Pittsburgh Post-Gazette story here later in the program, because I do want to keep talking about it. I think it's an important conversation, but I don't want to keep our guest waiting. Our guest is Dr. Micah Niemeyer Walsh, the Vice President of the American Federation of Government Employees Local 3340. Dr. Niemeyer Walsh, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Really excited to have you back on the show. Early last year, nearly 1,000 NIOSH employees were placed on administrative leave. Can you tell us what the latest news is?
So the latest news is about a week and a half ago, all NIOSH employees were reinstated. So we won. We saved NIOSH. Big victory.
Yes, I mean that's huge. How did that happen?
Yeah, so we don't know what the final grain of sand was that tipped the scale, but I'll say this: our coworkers and our union never stopped fighting, and I really think that's what did it. It's been 9 months of being on administrative leave for the majority of folks at NIOSH. And despite, the constant sort of, fear of, is today the day that I'm going to lose my job? Is today the day that they're going to actually separate me and take me off administrative leave? People kept up the fight. We kept advocating for NIOSH. We kept organizing together. And I think that's ultimately what did it, is that, we never gave up.
What were some of the things that your union nationally and locally did to fight for the workers at NIOSH?
So kind of the moment that we got our layoff notices, we began organizing because we were horrified for what this means, not only for us and our livelihoods, but also for every single working person in this country. So, we got together and formed a speakers bureau of NIOSH employees that were willing to speak to the press, both on and off the record. And we began coordinating together. We formed a big signal chat with basically most NIOSH employees to stay in touch and keep each other in the loop and informed with what's going on. And we also had a big rally in DC that we helped put together with the National AFL-CIO last May with a bunch of other unions that were there in solidarity with us. And we kept in communication with other national unions as well to, bring them into the fight with us.
The first thing that happened, basically every single NIOSH employee being placed on administrative leave was about 9 months ago. Can you, what was that like in the moment that it happened? And then can you walk us up to what happened when you got the notice that everybody's going to be returning to work? Because at one point, some number, I think like 30 or 40% of the workers got their jobs back. But what was it like when you got the initial notice, and then kind of what has happened in between then and now, and what was that like for workers?
Yeah, so when we all got the notice, we were pretty shocked. NIOSH has been relatively uncontroversial for the majority of its existence. Pretty bipartisan support for thinking that workers shouldn't get sick or die on the job, right? So we were shocked that we were facing the level of destruction that we were facing. Everyone was really scared about what was going to happen to our data, that belongs to the American people.
Yeah, and I guess that's probably an open
looking at that.
The data question is probably still an open question. I would be interested in hearing from you in a couple of weeks once everybody's back at work and you're able to kind of get a handle on like, okay, what's happened to the files over the last 9 months. I would be worried about leaving leaving my files unaccompanied by people who know actually what the directories are. I would be worried about that. But I want to emphasize just how strange this was because NIOSH, you mentioned that it has generally been very, very kind of bipartisan and uncontroversial, and part of the reason for that is that NIOSH is not an enforcement agency. They're a research department, right? It's not like OSHA, who, there are employers that get mad at OSHA because they want to be able to, kill their workers without any consequences, right? It's not NIOSH is not going out and fining companies. NIOSH is doing research that can help companies understand what the best practices are with respect to safety, what PPE is effective and how effective it is. Doing research on new hazards and stuff like that. And this is research that if the government didn't do it, it would probably not get done because, companies don't want to do it. And so companies like having, they like having the information, and whether they ignore it or not is another thing. But it is, it is really bizarre when you like. Why would you do that? And even Shelley Moore Capito has been kind of one of the biggest champions for NIOSH in the Senate. As far as Republicans go, she's done a lot to try to push back against RFK on behalf of the workers of NIOSH, like yourself, and on behalf of the American workers and the businesses who rely on its research. So it was such a bizarre thing for RFK and HHS to do, and so yeah. So I don't know if you have anything else that you would want to add to that, but then you can continue talking about what it was like and what it's been like in the last 9 months. Sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely. Great points. And I think a big part of what happened was that the people in charge making these decisions about who was getting laid off have no clue how the agency functions. They have no clue what various parts of the department does. And so they didn't really think about the consequences of getting rid of NIOSH, not recognizing that means that there would be no one to test and certify respirators. That affects every industry. So yeah, they didn't, know, and therefore didn't really recognize the consequences of their actions. So yeah, and so after we got the layoff notices, we immediately jumped to work. We began organizing, advocating, coordinating with our supporters. And it's been a marathon, right? It's been 9 months. Imagine 9 months you're not working, and every day you're like, it's today the day that I lose my job. But yeah, folks kept fighting, and we kept speaking out. And the 30% of us that got reinstated a couple weeks after all of the layoff notices went out, which were primarily in areas like firefighter safety and health research, World Trade Center health research, folks who were exposed on 9/11, and coal mining. Those folks that were brought back, we were going into the office every day while the majority of our coworkers were not. So the buildings were mostly empty. It was very strange. And I think, when we got the news that everyone was coming back, the folks who'd been reinstated, it was unexpected. They had no idea that it was going to happen. We had no clue. It was just like out of the blue. And so the folks that were in the office were like, oh my gosh, this is great. All of our coworkers are coming back. But the folks that got the notice were like, oh my gosh, I've for 9 months have had a different life. Now what? I have to come back tomorrow. And so folks are having to make some pretty tough decisions about if they got a new job, if they're coming back. So right now, while it is a huge victory and we're so excited that NIOSH is going to be able to continue our important work, we're in a rebuilding phase where we kind of have to take a census of who is left, what expertise is left, what expertise did we lose, and what can we do to move forward to continue our important mission. So yeah, I think we're so excited that we're able to continue, but like, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done still.
And, we've touched on it a little bit, throughout the conversation, but can you give a little bit more detail into what, some of the important work that NIOSH does?
Yeah. So basically name a hazard, name a job, and NIOSH has done research on how to make that job safer. So everything from, psychosocial stressors to chemical hazards to physical hazards, ergonomics. NIOSH basically does the work to make recommendations for best practices to keep folks safe on the job. So yeah, as I mentioned, the respirator approval and testing, without NIOSH, there would be no one to do that. If there were to be a new chemical introduced into a manufacturing process without NIOSH, there would be no one looking at what the effects might be if workers start getting sick, and two, to even know how to measure that chemical. NIOSH also has a bunch of chemists that make measurement methods for these things. So yeah, when we were facing the destruction of NIOSH, it was pretty scary to think about the implications of what that meant. So yeah, it's hard to overstate how crucial NIOSH is to the functioning of the health and safety of the working people of this country.
And you talked about how, as they come into the office, there's going to be a real need to identify, like, who are the people that have moved on, because, it's unlikely that every single one of the NIOSH employees have kind of stayed and not gotten different jobs because of how, because of the instability that this whole debacle has introduced into this job that they thought was relatively stable. But is there anything else that you think is worth talking about as far as what's next for NIOSH workers in protecting not only their jobs but the work that they do for the American people?
I think moving forward, I will say, the chaos and the stress and the turmoil of this past year, the silver lining to all of it is that there's never been more solidarity across NIOSH, with NIOSH employees amongst each other, and also with the entire labor movement and NIOSH, right? So that's one thing that came out of this, is that we're so much more connected than we were, a year ago. And I think that's really going to serve us well as we move forward to rebuild, as we make a plan. And, I think NIOSH employees want to make sure that they have a strong voice in decision making on how NIOSH is rebuilt. So I think that's really, as a union, those are our next steps, is what can we do to make sure that we go forward in a way that is, with scientific integrity, that we're able to do things like public health research that actually is needed. Those are sort of the things that we're thinking about now. And 9 months ago, we were thinking that there was going to be no NIOSH, and that was really scary. And now, despite the difficult situation that we're in with trying to figure out who's coming back, we at least know NIOSH will continue to exist, right? The kernel of NIOSH is still there, and I think that's what is giving people, hope, and why folks are still coming back, right? Because a lot of folks are coming back, even if they found new jobs, and it's because they care about the work that they do. Right. So, yeah.
Dr. Micah Niemeyer Walsh, Vice President of AFGE Local 3340. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you want to leave us with before we let you go?
No, I appreciate you having me on and giving me the opportunity to share the excellent news. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your work, and look forward to keeping up with the story. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been keeping up with the story, and we've done an interview with Micah before. We also did an interview with Kathy Tenney-Zara, the president of AFGE Local 3430, not 3340, 3430, at NIOSH in West Virginia, and Anita Wolf, a NIOSH retiree. We did that interview a few weeks ago or something. And during that interview, we talked about the pay of NIOSH workers. And I figured that portion of the interview would be worth replaying for you here as we talk about this victory, because, I know that you don't hear about, as much about it now, but when there was the real propaganda about like overpaid government bureaucrats, that is not who the people at NIOSH are. Let's play clip 5 and let these two women talk to you about, the pay of their coworkers. Do you mind sharing what your GS level is?
I can tell you that for the coal team.
Okay. What is it?
Which is very interesting, because that program, the program that goes out and does all of that for the coal miners, is ran pretty much with a staff of 11 people. 11 people do both the in-office work and the mobile work. And we have 2 commissioned officers in the U.S. Public Health Service, and we have 6 other people that are a grade GS7.
Oh my God.
And 2 contractors that do data entry for us. That's yeah. So I'll tell you, our budget, the budget for the coal team or the coal program in 24 was $466,000. The contractors, and because we have to contract with our B readers or with physicians to read and interpret these films for us. They're not NIOSH employees. The contractors accounted for $275,000, and the rest of the program operated on $191,000 per year, $3 per coal miner. So you're right. Wow. These people aren't getting rich.
And especially with your specialized experience, you couldn't get paid to do the work that you're doing in the private sector, but you could probably find a private sector job to get paid. I mean, maybe I don't know what are the prospects for people that used to work at NIOSH that are not going to have this as an option potentially. I mean, Lord willing, we can stop this and we can get these people back on the job, and that's what we're all hoping for. But if that doesn't happen, what are the employment prospects for folks like this? Like, what other kind of jobs exist out there? And am I correct in assuming that they could probably get some sort of better paying job in the private sector just working for the other team, frankly?
Yeah, probably most of them could. It's crazy because the people that worked at NIOSH and are commissioned officers and all, they are very specialized, and so some of them are really worried about finding another job where their expertise and all the years that they've spent in public health would be valued or would even count. For instance, I just want to tell you a quick story. There's a CO who is now, I'm not going to say which facility, but she is the only person in her building. Okay. And the way the COs have to go through this firing, as I call it, is different than the GS employees in that they have a place where they can go and look and see what commissioned officer positions are open around the nation, and then they can apply for them. But most of those are doctors and nurses and like that. So the ones that are specialized as epidemiologists and all don't really have a lot to bid on. If they haven't been vetted already, like if they haven't had enough time in the commission corps, they lose everything. They lose their retirement. And so a lot of these people in their 40s, it's like they're going to be just starting their career if they have to start over. But this particular person, too, being the only person in the building, at the last day that the employees were there, the janitor came to her and said, I'm going to have to come with me. I'm going to have to show you how to start the boiler in this building, because there's not going to be anybody here to do it. And my guess is that before very long, the electricity and heat and everything in this building will be shut down, because there's nobody here to even pay the bills. Now, is that the way to treat any employee? You know, you're going to be sitting here in a building with no heat and no electricity, or it's just not the way to treat workers or people. And that's probably my biggest beef with the whole thing. It was just all federal employees were lumped into this category of you're lazy, you don't do anything, when I would venture to say that if I were to ask the people that were behind this, tell me what NIOSH does, they wouldn't even be able to put a sentence together about what we do.
Just to let y'all know, I've been a federal employee for a long time. Folks, a GS7 in that specialized environment is crazy. The starting pay for a GS7 is $55,000 a year in Morgantown. The top pay after the step 10, which step 10, GS7 step 10, would take you like 20 years or something ludicrous to get to. Okay. So, but if you did get to a step 10, that would be $72,000. That is not a lot of money for the kind of work that they were doing. I mean, that's crazy.
Are we still on the air, Jacob?
Oh, yes, you are. I thought, yes, you are still. You're still here.
I just had someone from NIOSH who was listening in, and it's an engineer from NIOSH that just sent me a text and said, let him know that some of the engineers were offered jobs the day after they were fired, and the starting salary was double what they were making at NIOSH. But they're waiting to see if they'll get called back.
There were engineers at a GS7?
No, not at a GS7.
Okay.
No, they were a higher grade, but still, when private sector offered them jobs and found out they'd been riffed, it was double what they were making at NIOSH. But these people are still waiting to see if they're going to get called back, because they believe so much in what they were doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so, that's so gross. I mean, I was a GS12 as a project manager at the Corps of Engineers. We had engineers who were GS13s. But we were in the Department of Defense, and so so there's more money even for the Department of Defense. But even as working in the Department of Defense, I knew project managers who worked in the private sector who made twice as much money as I did. And I've talked to NLRB attorneys, people who are barred attorneys, right? As a GS like 13, 14, and I know people that were fired from the NLRB that got offers from management side law firms, literally the next week, again, making double what they were making in the government.
Sorry, Jacob. So Anita was talking about the coal team and that being their salary. Yeah, we have a lot of other areas have a lot of the postdocs, PhD plus, and those are definitely higher graded employees. But at the same time, they believe in what they're doing, and that's why they are here.
All right. So, hopefully that gives you some sort of just a reminder. These are not rich government bureaucrats. They're not getting high on the hog sort of deal. But I really appreciate Micah, Kathy, and Anita for taking the time to talk to us when they did, and really excited. I mean, just such an exciting victory. You don't often hear about victories where, the Trump administration not only, didn't do the extent of the damage that they had wanted to do, but they failed totally. So. We have on the line Dave Camper, a researcher for the Economic Policy Institute, and author. We talked to him a couple of months ago, I think, about his new book. You should check it out. But he is also a resident of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so he was able to be there for what looked to me to be what amounted to the first general strike basically since 1946 is the last time that it looks like there was a general strike in the U.S. I mean, this had genuinely the support of unions. Lots of businesses closed, lots of workers called out. So really, a really exciting thing that happened yesterday that is unfortunately now being dampened by reports of a person being shot by federal law enforcement. I think it's ICE in Minneapolis again today. Unclear about the status of the victim. But Dave, thank you for taking the time to talk to us this morning. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been a roller coaster 24 hours.
Yeah, I guess, I guess the first thing is, it's been, I think the first reports of this shooting came out about 2.5 hours ago. And I don't know if you've been able to monitor that any closer than I have, but what is your understanding of the state of play with respect to the shooting that happened this morning?
Yeah, and I'm only relying upon what I've been seeing on the news myself, but the Minneapolis police are reporting that the man died. There's video out that's very disturbing, and I would encourage caution before anyone watch it. This guy is clearly being tackled by 5, 6, 7 ICE officers. His arms are folded up around his chest. He's struggling like anybody would struggle when you're being tackled by 5, 6, or 7 people, but he is on the ground. He is completely on the ground. And 2 officers, at least by the video, step back and just frankly put a bunch of rounds in him. And it's terrible, and it's horrifying. And Minneapolis police has said he's died. PBS says he's 51. I'm 51. This is frightening and horrible. And there's no way this isn't some kind of retaliation for the fact that 50,000, 75,000 of us showed up yesterday in joyful solidarity to protest ICE.
Wow. Yeah, I actually, it just came up on my Twitter feed as you were describing it, and you were describing it exactly. I mean, Jesus, that is, that's insane. And so, I've seen reports about Minnesota and Minneapolis officials reiterating their calls for ICE and the federal government to get out of Minnesota. And so, I don't know at this point, Fortunately for us, as a weekly program, we do not have to typically do very much like breaking news, and this is really about as breaking as it gets. And so I don't know that there's really much else to say about it. You always learn a little bit more, and so I would encourage people if you're watching this to continue watching, seeing what develops, and there will probably be a clearer picture by the time that we release this as a clip. So I don't know that there's much else to say about that, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about what happened yesterday, and that's a little bit more hopeful to talk about. So, Dave, were you able to actually go out? The one of the most inspiring things about yesterday is that 50 to 75,000 people came out in the streets, and just to illustrate that number, actually, we got a clip from Twitter. Let's play clip 6 just so that folks watching can get a sense for the scale of the demonstrations yesterday. So just huge crowd sizes, between 50 and 75,000 people out, actually physically in public, outside, in sub-zero temperatures. You got to think about how many more people would have been out if it was just a little bit more temperate. And then, there were probably a lot of people who called out sick and kind of, did the, and went on strike basically without going out and demonstrating. But Dave, were you able to be out yesterday?
Yes. I was one of the marshals for the march. We have a pretty big infrastructure of mostly labor people who have over many years become kind of trained to be marshals for events like this. And so there were about 100 of us. And we were just kind of trying to keep the peace, which we did, and to keep the crowd moving. It was incredibly cold. we should have all bought stock in the hand warmer manufacturers before, because everybody had them. But I was standing on one street corner, kind of guarding or sort of blocking, holding the intersection, and the crowd took more than 2 hours to walk past me. And I tried to estimate a couple of times, and there were at least 200 people a minute going past, probably more like 300, 400, 500 a minute. So we're probably talking 40, 50,000 people who just walked past me on that street. It was incredibly inspiring because, like, we're in Minnesota. It's cold. This was cold. It was -10. They cancel school when it's -10. There's an exploding tree warning out right now because
I saw that on Twitter yesterday.
And
I had never heard of exploding trees before.
It was incredibly. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the dedication and the resilience to have that many people. I mean, that doesn't just happen for no reason. Right. And so that's probably a good opportunity to talk a little bit about what was it, Dave, that pushed so many people out to the streets?
It's not just one thing. I mean, the murder of Renee Good is certainly one of the key catalysts, but it's just the ongoing the ongoing insult. I'm an historian by training, and I can't help but think of the Fugitive Slave Act in the 1850s, where northern cities were made by the federal government to round up people accused of being escaped slaves. And it was that complicity that they were required to be in that turned so many northerners towards the side of abolitionism when they otherwise were sitting on the fence. What's happening here in Minneapolis is that ordinary citizens here in the Twin Cities, and I should say I technically live in the suburbs. I live in Brooklyn Park. I don't want stolen valor here to say I'm in the heart of Minneapolis, but what's happening is ordinary citizens are seeing these things happening right outside their doors to people they know, to people they care about, and it's radicalizing people by the day, and not just sort of your usual suspects. The crowd yesterday was as many people over 40 as under 40. There were faith leaders. There were students, there were parents, there were grandparents, there were people, whole families with strollers and things bringing their kids along. This is a community-wide reaction to this, to the indignity of seeing these horrible things happening next to them every single day.
Some of the conservative types will respond and say, "Oh, they're getting the worst of the worst," and I've got some of these numbers, and so if you don't have them offhand, I've got a little bit of it, but I don't know if you have any response to those assertions that all of these people that they're rounding up are illegal criminals.
I mean, 2 days ago, they took a 5-year-old kid, and they were trying to bait the person's parents to come out of the house so they could grab them. They grabbed a Hmong citizen and dragged him out of his house in his underwear with a blanket over him. He was 70 years old. There may very well be some people here who have been convicted of crimes who happen to be being picked up. But what's happening is ICE is getting in their fancy SUVs. They're driving around. They see a brown person. They're getting out and grabbing them and throwing them into their car. That's what they're doing. There's nothing more targeted, more specific than that. There's, among other things, as this being a labor report, there's absolutely no action being taken against employers who are paying sub-minimum wages, who are violating labor laws. If you worry about immigration and jobs, and frankly, you shouldn't, but if you do, the way to address that is to have enforceable labor standards so that all employers are held responsible for who they employ. That would resolve the whole problem without having to kidnap anybody or shoot anybody. It's absolutely ridiculous.
And if they were so confident in the percentages of people that are actually have been convicted of heinous crimes that they're getting out of the country, then they would release the data. But they haven't been releasing that data since, I believe it's October or November. They haven't released the data, the comprehensive data of people that they have that they have basically abducted, and in some cases deported. Instead, they
tried, I think at the beginning of this week, to claim something like 1,300 people had been who were criminals were turned over to ICE, and actually the Minnesota Department of Corrections, hardly a radical institution, came out with a correction and said, no, nearly every single one of those was someone who was already in a Minnesota prison for some other, who had been convicted of crime, and that upon their release, as is per normal practice, they were turned, over to the custody of Customs and Border Patrol or immigrant. And like, this was not because of these stormtroopers on the street. It was normal practice that they're trying to claim credit for. It's the routine lying is just epic right now.
Exactly. And the numbers that we were getting up until October or November, and there's every reason to believe that the numbers look worse for the administration now. For one, because they're not releasing it, and for two, because the actions have only increased by ICE and DHS and CBP, and so there's every reason to believe that the numbers look worse now than they did in October, November. And in October, November, the numbers that we have, only 5% of the people that were deported had a violent conviction. Only 8% had a violent conviction or a property conviction, and 73%, it was like 60 or 70% of the people that had been taken and deported had zero pending charges or convictions. Not even just like, do you have a traffic ticket or whatever? And so, like, even among the people that the 40% of people that had convictions, the vast majority of those were like traffic tickets or something like that, right? And so the idea that it's just the numbers do not demonstrate that. So, and you mentioned that if there was a real interest in protecting workers, what you would be doing is going after employers who are abusing undocumented immigrants and native-born workers. I'm curious why you think that the unions decided to go to get involved so heavily, and what you make about some of the capital D discourse, I guess, on Twitter about whether or not it's proper to call this a general strike. There are some kind of people that are saying this is worthless, this doesn't mean anything, this isn't a general strike or whatever, that I was kind of flummoxed by, actually. But so do you think this is a general strike? And to the extent that it is or isn't, why did unions get involved as much as they did?
So it's an interesting question. I think it is both more than and less than a general strike. The reason is this is genuinely a community action far beyond just workplace action, right? The morning, before the big march, there were a couple hundred faith leaders who literally flew in around the country to protest at the airport. A bunch were arrested. There are businesses that are not unionized businesses by the hundreds that voluntarily closed their doors in recognition of this. So there's something broader to the community beyond just a workplace strike. But I think there was also a workplace element to it. And a big part of it is labor. Minnesota, especially the Twin Cities, has a very tight-knit labor community. You look at the last 20 years, and a lot of the rest of the country, for example, has seen a lot of conflict between Service Employees International Union, SEIU, and other unions over the change to win split and the other things. That never happened in Minnesota. Everyone stayed friends in Minnesota. And they've built this incredibly tight-knit community where everyone looks out for each other. And it's really this sort of we're looking out for each other aspect that I think is the most Minnesotan part of it. And that's why I feel like general strike isn't the whole thing. This is an exercise in community self-care. We're looking out for each other here, and we're sending a message that we're looking out for each other, and we're willing to put ourselves, on the line to do so. Obviously, unfortunately, someone made that ultimate sacrifice again today. As we speak, there are dozens of people around Minnesota right now trailing ICE with cameras. They didn't stop because someone got killed. And that's more than a general strike, but also general strike is inadequate in that way. So yes, there was a general strike, but there was something more than a general strike, is what I would say, which is, I think, we trying to have it both ways.
Yeah. And so what is it that you think that, and I know we're going to have to let you go soon, so this may be the last question that we have for you, but I'm curious what you make of the decision of not only unions, right? Because an individual local union saying to essentially violate the contract and go on strike, or maybe winking and nudging and encouraging their members to do that. That's one thing. But the labor federations in Minneapolis and Minnesota, the Labor Council and the State Federation, also engaged in the, I think explicit calls to call out of work and take the day off and go out and protest if you can. And so there was kind of winks and nudge from the labor federations to kind of, give people a little bit of leeway in what they decided to do. But, there's like explicit rules against labor federations telling people to go on strike and to participating in collective bargaining, and certainly against violating union contracts. And so to me, that seems like a big step for the council, the labor councils and the state federations to make this move to, at the very least, implicitly encourage their members to go on strike. Am I right that to interpret this as a huge move? And why did they make that move?
You are absolutely right. And actually, one of the biggest pieces of it is that it wasn't just the Minneapolis and St. Paul regional labor federations, but it was the rural, what we call greater Minnesota labor federations as well. So not just the Metro core. And to me, the thing that has an underdeveloped story here is that if you look at central labor councils around much of the country, what marks them out as inactivity is that most of the big unions aren't engaged in them, and that the people who end up on those central labor councils probably don't represent organized labor as a whole. Well, in Minnesota, every union is engaging in their central labor council. It's actually a pretty big deal that our teachers union is merged, and so all those NEA members who in all the other states aren't even part of the AFL-CIO are part of the AFL-CIO here, and that's why an Education Minnesota member is the president of the Minnesota AFL-CIO. Why a former Minneapolis Federation of Educators leader is over at the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation. We have, again, for many years, all unions have been engaged in the central labor bodies, and those central labor bodies have been active and engaged in lots of things for many years. There's been some conflict and tension over that. During the George Floyd riots, there was a real back and forth over the possibility of some law enforcement staging out of the Regional Labor Federation office, and they got kicked out. And there was some discomfort with that. But the truth is, the unity across labor here is deeper and wider than in a lot of other places. And that's the conscious effort of scores of union leaders and tens of thousands of union members over many years to build ourselves something that really stands together. It's something I wish I could claim any kind of credit here. I can't, but I can be proud of it for being part of it.
Something that somebody in Minneapolis said that's a difference between now and George Floyd is that, and it's funny that you mentioned that. That's why I thought about it. The internal dissension and like division because the murder was committed by somebody that was a part of the Minneapolis community, and so there was kind of there was just kind of a dispersed rage against Minneapolis as an institution, whereas these are intruders. This is an outside force coming in and harassing Minneapolis. And so now the feeling of unity is much stronger, according to at least one account. And there's not like interest in rioting and attacking, the police building or local businesses and stuff, because it's the entire Minneapolis and Twin Cities and Minnesota community against the federal government. Does that track with how you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a terrible way to have unity, but it is making us recognize that we're all in this together. And so again, this is terrible. And what happened this morning is unspeakably tragic. It is helping to build a sense of community. And I wish it didn't require tragedy. I wish it didn't require armed stormtroopers in the street. But if we're going to have armed stormtroopers in the street, let's use the opportunity to build some community together. And I really do think that's what we're seeing here. I would be stunned if this was the end of it. I think we're going to see more engagement from Minnesotans. I think we're going to see more radicalization from everyday Minnesotans. I think you're going to see faith leaders and labor leaders standing side by side in the weeks and months to come. I think it potentially could be a real sight to behold.
Dave, thank you so much for taking the time on such short notice to talk to us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Solidarity.
Dave Camper is a researcher with the Economic Policy Institute, a member of his union, the Nonprofit Professional Employees Union, NPEU, Local 70, and author of the book, Who's Got the Power? The Resurgence of American Unions, and a resident of the suburbs of Minneapolis. We've got, there's a whole bunch of union press releases that we can kind of pull from. But Adam, I'm curious if you've got any, any responses or thoughts about that conversation before we dive into that. And folks, if you want to call in, 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. We'd love to hear from you if you're from Minnesota. If you're not from Minnesota, interested in your thoughts as well. But Adam, go ahead.
Well, I don't have a lot to add beyond just really appreciating that perspective from Dave. And it does make me feel a little more hopeful, that kind of unity, that kind of solidarity that's being expressed there. We talk about it all the time on this show that our only hope is people power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the bad guys have a lot. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of force. But we have our people power, our strength in numbers, and I really am inspired by the Minnesotans out there who are organizing and who are showing up for each other. I think that's really, really important. And so I really also appreciated what Dave shared about the CLCs, the Central Labor Councils, and the institutions there, and the ability to work together to participate, because, the sad thing is, so much of our labor movement across the country, particularly here in the South, is just so underdeveloped, compared to the movement in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So, I think it's a call to action for all of us, on how we can build a movement that can, aspire to that kind of activity, that can build that kind of unity and diversity. So I think that's really a call to action for all of us. And, last weekend we talked a little bit about Dr. King, and we played some clips from Dr. King in honor of the holiday. And, I think it's just a good reminder that throughout the history of this country, every bit of positive change has come from people power. It's come from everyday people organizing for positive change from the bottom up. If you look at throughout the history of the 20th century, the labor movement in the 30s, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the peace movement. Look at the 19th century. Dave brought up abolition and the abolitionist movement. I mean, how the American Revolution itself, right? So our entire history is a history of push and pull, and everyday people banding together to try to find a more just future and a more just community for all of us, to try to get this country to live up to its promises and its ideals. And, so that's really sitting with me on how we in the South can make change and how we break through, because we know we have so many of our brothers and sisters out there who don't think like this, and who are very, very propagandized, and who are very divided and confused. I mean, that's the reality in the South, is a lot of our working class brothers and sisters have been captured by bigotry and confusion and propaganda. And it's our job to educate and to reach people and to build that kind of strength and solidarity.
Yes, absolutely. As we said, lots of unions and labor federations in Minneapolis participated in the action, and released statements about it. And it's, really, really, it's exciting to hear, or to see. We've got a caller on the line, this one from a 229 area code. Let's go ahead and bring them on the air. 229 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Tim calling from Asheville, North Carolina. Wanted to branch off of the the Minnesota stuff, but also talk a little bit about what's going on in Asheville with Asheville City Association of Educators.
All right, Tim. Yeah, let us know your thoughts.
Yeah. So just biggest shout outs ever. Solidarity, respect, everything to the St. Paul Federation of Educators. My local and St. Paul have been doing some work together for the last year, and they are the real deal. And yesterday, my statewide union, North Carolina Association of Educators, there was a call out to have people wear blue at work to stand in solidarity with Education in Minnesota. So those people are some absolute real ones.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the teachers' unions have really been helpful, I think, across the country. So, yeah, and I know some people actually that work for the Minneapolis Federation of Educators. So yeah, and we've had remember just a couple of months ago we had Brenda Johnson from the MFE on the program talking about their contract and how they were getting ready to strike over their contract, and it looks like they ended up striking over ICE. So yeah, I mean, really, really cool folks over there. I agree, Tim.
Yeah, and Tim, before you continue, I just wanted to say we mentioned earlier in the show about a big victory in Austin, Texas, where the AFSCME local there now has kind of a meet and confer sort of policy. It's the first city in Texas to enact this kind of policy where management has to consult with the union before changing policy for employees. And so I thought about you, and I thought about what's been going on over in North Carolina. So yeah, glad you called.
Dang, that's absolutely awesome to hear. Yeah, I super love that for Austin. Yeah, you want me to tell you about most?
Yeah, what else is going on?
Yeah, what's going on in North Carolina?
Cool. So we met Wednesday last week. And as of now, the main things that we've won are more ways to work from home on optional work days or inclement weather days. And then we also worked on a better inclement weather policy. We came to consensus on both of those, both sides. And so our last meeting was on the 15th, or no, it was on the 14th. But then on the 15th, we had inclement weather. And the district did not follow the revisions that we had discussed just the night before. So people are very upset. There was a lot of inclement weather. There's inclement weather this weekend. We most likely won't be back until Tuesday or Wednesday because of weather in the area. So people are really upset about our district not following what they said they agreed to. Our next meeting is February 11th. So the union will be bringing up the breach of process, basically, and the amount of people that were put into harm's way.
Right. Well, Tim, appreciate your work and all that y'all are doing for teachers up there, and yeah, I look forward to seeing y'all continue to win.
Oh yeah, thank you, man.
All right, thanks for the call.
Yeah, appreciate the call,
right,
and appreciate the report. Love to hear the good work happening. Do not love to hear that the district forgot about its own policy it talked about the night before. Do not love to hear that, but that's why you got to hold them accountable, and I know y'all will. So go Asheville.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is just a reminder to us that negotiations is just one of the tools in the tool belt. There are other ways that you can accomplish things. We like to have the sit-down negotiations. They're the most formal. They're the best way we think to do it. But sometimes it doesn't get you what you need.
Right, and even once you get, I mean, like you just demonstrated, even once you get a policy or in other situations, if you get a contract and you get a clause in the contract. I mean, when we were talking to the stagehands earlier in the program, she talked about how they had a clause in their contract with this venue for years that went unenforced and so was consistently violated, right? And so you gotta, getting the thing in writing is great, but yes, you do have to actually enforce it, and you've got to hold management accountable. So yeah, appreciate that reminder.
Totally. Thank y'all.
Adam, I said that I wanted to come back to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. So unless there's anything else that you wanted to say about Minnesota or North Carolina, is there anything else that you wanted to say about that before we go back to the Post-Gazette story?
No, that's fine.
Yeah. So where we left off, we were talking about the limitations of the demonstration of the demonstration of the limitations of labor law through this story, and I just wanted to dwell on that a little bit more because it is just so it's so terrible that this company was able to get away with for so long and is still getting away with breaking the law without any sort of consequences. And that is why, we need broader labor law reform. We need more power in the hands of workers, and we need to take power out of the hands of bosses and corporations and politicians and political donors. And some of the ways to do that are, passing the PRO Act. That one of the things that the PRO Act would do, it would be to institute real civil monetary penalties, not just for contempt of federal court, which is where the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette owners are at right now, but also for any unfair labor practices and for unresolved unfair labor practices and violations of workers' rights. Like, the violations of the law under the PRO Act could be fined in and of themselves. Before you even get to federal court, it would give the NLRB the power to issue fines, which it does not have the authority to do right now. I mean, right now, the mechanism that we're talking about for holding the owners of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette in contempt is the NLRB filing a motion with the federal court to ask the federal court to hold the paper in contempt, right? The NLRB doesn't have that authority. And so it takes that much longer. The NLRB is already taking a long time. And actually, Matt Brunig has a really good post about that. Maybe I can bring that up here in just a second, talking about how slow the NLRB has gotten. But even as slow as the NLRB is, the federal courts are even slower. And so the PRO Act would give the NLRB the authority to do this themselves, to issue civil monetary penalties and I think criminal penalties as well. It would also institute binding arbitration for first contracts, which is another way that this issue would have not gone on as long as it has. It would make it easier for workers to form unions, and not by if I'm remembering correctly, it's been a minute since I've read about the PRO Act, but if I'm remembering correctly, what the PRO Act did was awesome as far as elections. It did not institute immediate card check. What it did was it says that workers who file for a union election, if they have majority support, and then during the election, the company decides to violate the law, then the workers actually get recognized whatever the outcome of the election is. The union gets recognized whatever the outcome of the election. So rather than saying, card check automatically, what that would do is give an incentive to bosses and corporations to not break the law. Right? Because right now there is no incentive for corporations to not break the law in a union election, as is evidenced by the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and also Amazon in Bessemer, Alabama. They have gone through 2 elections already, and in both of those elections, the National Labor Relations Board has said that Amazon flagrantly violated federal law, the National Labor Relations Act, and Amazon has not even had to pay for it. So it's not even right to say Amazon just sees it as a cost of doing business, because so far there has been no cost to Amazon for violating federal labor law in the elections of workers at the Bessemer plant, right? So, and there are just so many ways that labor law in this country is just totally inadequate to check corporate power and to give workers free and fair elections. And so Adam, is there anything else that you think is important to say about the limitations of labor law and the importance of giving workers more power as it relates to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette story?
Well, you mentioned the Matt Brunig article, and I just wanted to lift that up. He put out a new piece on NLRBEdge.com. Unfair labor practices now take over 400 days to get to complaint. Yes. So it's gotten worse. I mean, it already wasn't great, but in the last few years, it has gotten significantly worse. And that is not good. Because as you said, right, the unfair labor practice system is already pretty weak. And then to think that you got to wait over a year to get any kind of weak resolution at the end of the thing is just, it's ridiculous. It is really, really ridiculous. And that's why I think, we as unionists have to be willing to embrace collective action and collective organizing in a really bold new way, because just relying on the law and the legalistic process is just not enough. It's just not enough. And so we've got to be building the kind of movement that can take direct action on a more consistent basis. And to your point, fight for the broader control, because we've got to be looking at other models, and we've got to be looking at how unions can get involved in other models. I know the Machinist Union, for example, has had some success getting involved in cooperatives. They have a really cool union cooperative in the lobster business up in Maine. Yes. And there's, so there's other examples like that. There are some building trades unions that run their own companies. There are opportunities, I think, for unions to think creatively, like we used to back in the old early days of the labor movement, when the Knights of Labor were around, right? And they were starting cooperatives left and right, and trying to build more comprehensive community power. So yeah, just some things that come to my mind. It is very frustrating to rely on this process that is designed to frustrate you.
We've got a caller on the line. I want to bring them on in just a second, but first I want to stomp on this point about the length of cases, the length of time that it takes to resolve anything through the NLRB or through the the legal process. Adam read from Brunig's report that in 2025, the number of days between an initial unfair labor practice charge being filed by like a union and the NLRB issuing a complaint rose to a record high of 441 days. That is more than a year between the time that a union files a charge and the NLRB is able to investigate and issue a complaint. But that's not even the end of the process, right? That's just the beginning of the process. Because once a complaint is filed by the NLRB, then an administrative law judge has to have a hearing about it, right? And so then the median days between a complaint being filed and an administrative law judge decision being issued has not seen this huge spike that the time between a charge and a complaint has, but it's still a long time. 245 days from the time that the NLRB files a complaint and an administrative law judge issues a decision. But that's not even the end of the story, because sometimes the administrative law judge decision might have exceptions filed to that. And so if that happens, then the NLRB has to issue a board decision. Last year, the board lacked a quorum for almost an entire year, and so virtually no board decisions were made. We only have data up to 2024 because nothing happened in 2025. But in 2024, the median number of days between an administrative law judge decision and a board decision was 500. Right? And so every step along the way just takes a ridiculous ridiculous amount of time is too much, and it just illustrates the complete inadequacy of the system to deal with the rampant lawlessness of the corporate class in the United States. We have to, we got to totally rewrite labor law. We've got to empower the NLRB. We've got to triple fund the NLRB, and then we got to give them guns. That's what I would run for president on. Triple fund the NLRB and give them a mech. So there you go. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette story really illustrates the inadequacy of labor law. Workers need more power. Let's get to this caller, 217 area code. Let's bring them on the air. 217 area code. What is your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, my name's Brandon. I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Brandon from Atlanta. What's on your mind?
Yeah, sorry. It sounds like y'all have moved on a little bit, but I wanted to call in about what's going on in Minneapolis again. And just in general, I agree with what you're just saying. I think it applies to what I'm about to say, too. Everything moves so slow. The direct action is really the only way forward. But it was pretty amazing to me to see the AFL-CIO and, all these like union federations and different labor organizations totally jumping in with what's going on in Minneapolis and Minnesota. I think we are living in an historic moment. Unions don't take action on political issues like this anymore. I mean, it's been 80 years since we had a general strike. I think the ruling class is panicking right now looking at this because, the unions haven't been in this for so long and they've been counting on the unions staying out of it. So with AFL-CIO being involved and endorsing, and even like the city council in Minneapolis, but yeah, the AFL-CIO, as soon as I saw what happened this morning, another murder by ICE and CBP in Minneapolis, I instantly called my AFL-CIO local here in Atlanta. I've never spoken to them before, but we keep talking to people in our union here. I'm a Teamster, and difficult to get people on the same page with us, and somebody on the board recommended the AFL-CIO. So, I left a message.
You
with
broke
them
up,
and,
Brandon. You broke up for just a second. You said,
if you care about this
can
stuff,
you hear me, Brandon?
You should also do the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. You broke up for just a second. You said somebody. You said somebody recommended you do, and then you kind of broke up a little bit.
Oh, okay. They recommended I call the AFL local to us. And because I saw them be active in Minneapolis, I thought, okay, maybe I should actually do that. So, we got to strike while the iron's hot. Everyone's really angry about this right now. And I think we should pressure the AFL-CIOs near to us, point at what they did in Minnesota and say, hey, it's really critical we do this right now. The solidarity strike, the political strike, it has to come back into our consciousness and on the agenda for unions. Or, frankly, I think if we don't do this, our right to unionization is going to go away.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree, Brandon. And Brandon, you said that you were a Teamster, and so I would love to know how your fellow members are reacting to any of this. And I don't know how much the person that you were talking to said that, or I don't know if there was a recommendation that you get the Teamsters to participate in the Labor Council, but I would definitely recommend that. I mean, as kind of lackluster and, sort of on the sidelines as many labor councils are, Dave talked about how that's kind of, that's kind of unfortunately the mark of labor councils across the country is that they're just not really doing anything.
Yeah.
But you certainly don't make that better by not participating, and not being involved where they exist. And so, I definitely recommend, the Teamsters in Atlanta participating in the labor council, as much as possible. But how are your members, reacting to all of this ICE stuff?
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, so I'm part of an organization called Warehouse and Shipping Workers Against ICE, launched, I think, in June, so it's a fairly new organization. So yeah, I've been talking to my coworkers a lot since then, and I've spoken to, I don't know, personally spoken to, I would say at least, 300, 500 people about this. And I've met one solitary person who was just like, no, you're wrong. A lot of people are just kind of like, wow, that's crazy, and like kind of try not to take a, people don't want to be divisive in the workplace and stuff like that, but
right.
You kind of give some basic facts about what's going on, and people don't want to see just like random executions in the street, right?
Right.
And so people are, I would say people are reticent to get active, but the fact that the Minneapolis Teamsters local posted a statement in support, the AFL-CIO there, like, I think we can use that leverage to, kind of reach out to our rank and file members and say, look, see, the union leadership is on board with this, and kind of like give them permission to speak their mind, and because like, especially in the South, like we do kind of have like this mentality of like, keep your head down and just get the job done and stuff. And, there's, I suppose, value to that, but we just have to like, it feels like we just have to give people permission to like get angry about this, this could be you, this like, and so it's kind of been slow moving. People don't want to like get in trouble, I guess, whatever that means to them. But there's no question. I mean, people are disgusted, absolutely disgusted.
Brandon, I don't know how you're watching us, if it's Facebook or YouTube, but I will note in the chat, Stussy, and I think that's a IATSE brother in Atlanta, mentioned that you could that the Teamsters 728 and 528 do both show up to the Labor Council meetings in Atlanta, and that the Labor Council meetings in Atlanta are the second Wednesday of every month at the IBEW auditorium, and also that there were over 200 Teamsters at the MLK March on Monday in Atlanta. So if you'd like to plug in, it sounds like there are opportunities, and there are already Teamsters participating. So Brandon, I appreciate your call. I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to say.
Yeah, I was there on Monday with our Workers Against ICE stuff, and I got off the phone I left a message at the AFL-CIO right before I called y'all. So,
perfect.
Hope we can get something moving here.
All right, Brandon, thanks for your call. I appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all.
We got a caller from a 714 area code. I think I know who this is. Let's go ahead and bring them on the air. Caller from a 714 area code. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Buenas tardes, buenos días to everyone out there. My name is Jose Francisco Negrete. I'm a 27-year rank and file Teamster, going to be 28 in June. Part of Teamster Mobilize, also part of Labor for Palestine, LAOCIE, and part of the Boycott Home Depot Coalition. If you haven't forgotten, please continue boycotting or spread the word about boycotting Home Depot, because we're seeing, especially out here in Southern California, how Home Depot is complicit with these kidnappings happening everywhere. And I want to say Happy New Year to you guys and Happy New Year to everybody as well. I guess I want to cut this little part of the segment called Jose's Corner. So I want to address two things. One, Teamster Mobilize will have a meeting tomorrow. It's called Working Class versus Ruling Class, the fight against ICE, and our goals for TM tomorrow. 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Central Time, and 10 a.m. Pacific Time. If you want to join us on Zoom, you could go on our socials, or if you could want to write this down, it's bit.ly/TM. Yeah, /TM-022. So we'll be having a meeting tomorrow. And I just want to say, I heard a conversation with one conversation you had last week from somebody from Minneapolis. I forgot what the position was, and somebody that I think he was an author. And I just want to say, Minneapolis is holding it down. Unfortunately, they had to go through having two martyrs. Now it looks like it's, for sure Renee Good, and then the taking of Liam Ramos. I forget how old he was. I think it was a 5-year-old. Mm-hmm. It took that extent to get people activated, but we're here right now. We're seeing the overreach of the federal government upon our streets. And while the focus is on Minneapolis, which rightfully so, because Minneapolis right now seems to be the flashpoint, let's not forget that we still have these Gestapos in Maine. We still have them in Texas. I think there was a raid in Arizona as well. And out here in Southern California, where it basically kick-started everything off. It still continues. We've seen these guys get very too comfortable going up to schools. We saw that in Minneapolis. Now we're seeing it out here in Southern California, in all places. Well, it happened in LA a couple months ago too. I forgot what high school it was. I don't know if it was Santee High School. I think it was in downtown LA. But we saw it out here as well too in Anaheim, where they got too close to a high school. So, they're getting comfortable in hitting up schools. So hopefully the community will go out there starting next week and patrol these high schools, patrol these junior highs, patrol these elementaries to keep our community safe. And the brother was talking about that it was a little bit more than solidarity. It was a little bit more than a general strike. The only thing that's more than a general strike is a revolution. And, I'm not saying we're in the revolution point, but right now we're seeing as revolutionary ideas being accepted because of the overreach of the federal government. And to see the general strike yesterday, to see all those images, and I don't know what they got. I'll call it general strike, what happened in Minneapolis. To see all those images and to see all these cities have their own solidarity action was a beautiful thing, So I just want to say that. And we started this year off with terrible news, a couple of days after the new year, martyr Renee Good was taken away from us, but 2026, our goal this year should be solidarity and organize our workplace. We need to organize our workplace because we're seeing ICE go into these businesses. So we need protection. We need to hold these companies accountable. Like ICE does not have the free will to go into a private property, but they do because they have no respect to the law. They're above the law. So we still need to organize within our shop floor, but also organize within our community. Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Maine, Texas, Arizona. You're seeing communities organized, but we still need to keep on organizing. Our mission should not stop. The right is very, very well organized. This time that the left does that as well. And I'm glad to see that there was a call, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, with PSL, DSA, and some other organizations coming together, which was a beautiful thing. Because you know what, we all need to be organizing together, because the time is now. You know, so 2026 is the year of solidarity, is the year of organize. Keep on organizing in communities, organizing your workplaces, but we need to keep organized. And I want to say thank you, and keep up the good work, and Happy New Year to you guys, and let's keep on doing what we need to do.
Yep. Thanks, Jose. Appreciate it. Can Ben, do we have it set up where if I send you a link, you can go to the browser and play a video, and that would be heard on the stream? I think I can do that. Yeah, let me send you this link, because I'm so frustrated with, actually I can just, you've got the notes, right? I can put it in the notes. I'm gonna it's dropped under the notes under Jose Call. It's a video from Ken Klippenstein, and I'm just so, I mean, there are so many of these videos of these, you know, I mean, what else do you call them? Freaks. That I really don't think people outside of kind of a left liberal bubble are seeing, because you know, I mean, these guys are really being empowered by this administration to violate people's rights and to just abuse people. So let's have we got the video lined up? Okay. Yeah, let's. Okay. We're gonna
Austin, if you hate what that orange Skeletor in the White House is doing to our country, No Kings is hosting another.
No, that's not. That was an old clip. All right. Okay. And there's a bunch of other clips that we've seen. I mean, we've seen ICE agents talking about how, didn't you learn from what happened a few days ago, referring to, you know, the execution of Renee Good. And we've seen people, you know, I mean, we have seen people profiling people, just these ICE agents just asking random people if they're U.S. citizens because they're brown and they are, you know, maybe have some sort of accent or something. And we actually, and we've got, you know, Republicans being triggered at the insinuation that some of this racial profiling might be happening. We've actually got a clip of that I want to play for you in just a second. It's already loaded in our clips, and so it won't be hard to play. But maybe we've got this ICE clip from today, like just a couple of hours ago. But maybe we're able to play this now. Let's see if we can play this King clip. Okay. So I don't think that we're hearing it, but you can see the subtitles, and so we'll include it for the audio only listeners. We'll include a link to the tape so that you can see this. But for the people who are watching us, you know, I mean, it's this guy saying it's not illegal to record. You know, why are you taking my information down? And then they says, we got a nice little database, and now you're considered a domestic terrorist. I mean, these guys are like, these guys in this clip here, you know, I don't want to say, you know, I mean, I don't know that I'd have a problem with saying it, but I'm not saying here all ICE agents. These guys in this clips are power-hungry freaks who need to be removed from their positions of authority and never given a gun and a license to kill again, because that's what they've got right now. And they cannot obviously be trusted with that. And so let's, I don't know, Adam, if you've got anything else that you wanted to say about that, but if not, and we're going to go, if Ben, if you're good to go another 15 minutes or so, I want to play this because there's, but before I do that, Adam, did you have anything else that you wanted to say?
No, just wanted to point out that I'm still hearing the clip on my end, just FYI.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know why that's happening exactly. I think I'm sure Ben will be able to figure that out. And while he's figuring that out, I will.
We're doing the best we can.
Yeah,
you know, there's a weather storm today. We're just rolling with the punches.
Yeah, no. I mean, I tried to do something that we don't normally do. So it's, we're but here's what I wanted. Here's the other thing that I wanted to talk about. I mentioned that these guys are like they are obviously in many situations racially profiling people. I mean, that is just undeniable. And actually, they're called Kavanaugh stops because Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court wrote a decision allowing this racial profiling. And so I wish I had dropped this in my notes because there was I put the stuff for Kavanaugh stops. I had seen it. I read it the other day, and it's just so clear what is going on, and so it's bonkers that there are people pretending like this isn't happening. But let's see if I can find it on here. There are, the Supreme Court has said that, there are 4 ways to establish probable cause or reasonable suspicion for stopping a person, and that is, here it is, apparent race or ethnicity, speaking Spanish or English with an accent, presence at a particular location, and the type of work one does. If you just have those things, that is enough, according to the Supreme Court, for you to be stopped and asked if you're an undocumented person or not. Right? And so that is like definitionally profile. I don't know what else to say that is other than profiling. And if you don't recognize that, it's crazy. And so there's a bill in the Alabama State House that would allow Alabama Alabama law enforcement officers to basically be deputized by the federal government and detain people on suspicion of immigration violations. And there's all sorts of reasons you wouldn't want you wouldn't want local law enforcement enforcing federal immigration law, because you want immigrants, documented or not, to be able to call on local law enforcement when they have a problem. If you don't have that, then you could see crime and violence and exploitation proliferate in these communities further and victimize people even more. Because if every time you approach a cop, you are concerned about being deported, that would affect your willingness to interact at all with the cops, right? And so that's a big reason that this bill is bad. And it was introduced last week in the Alabama legislature, and there were a bunch of people that testified against it, including a preacher who adopted a Guatemalan child who is now a U.S. citizen and is concerned about, interacting with cops and stuff because of this bill, concerned about going out in public because of all the ICE stuff, and would be even more concerned about interacting with any law enforcement if this bill passes. And so he was there testifying on behalf of his daughter and, other people in his community against it. And, there are some people that got triggered, some law enforcement officers who are also legislators, who got triggered about the idea that maybe possibly sometimes law enforcement in the United States racially profiles people. Here is one of the state legislators. I think his last name is Bedsole. I think his first name is Roger or Russell, getting triggered by it. Let's play clip 1.
I've been in the profession 27 years, and I have never, not one time, been a part of or seen or been in the same room or encounter any directives, any policy, any unorganized agreement amongst officers to go out and target people based off the color of their skin, their nationality. And if this is a systemic problem, then I would believe in 27 years that I would have seen it somewhere.
Okay. So Now, look, he used a lot of politician speak there, right? I never saw any policy or directive or agreement to racially profile people or whatever. And so, maybe if you confronted him about it, he would say, oh, well, of course I've seen racism and discrimination. I just never saw an agreement or a policy or a directive or whatever. Maybe he would wiggle out of it that way. But what he is responding to is obviously a concern about generalized discrimination, racism, and profiling and stuff. And so, it's not necessarily a concern that there's going to be a policy memo come from D.C. saying to racially profile people, right? That's obviously not the concern, but the concern is that this might happen and that that policy would be kind of implicitly pushed through the ranks. And so, the idea that you're responding to it with this kind of thing, with that lawyer speak, is so ridiculous, because it's if he meant it to be weasel words, it's non-responsive to the question. And if he meant it to be all-encompassing, then this guy is the problem, right? Because if you've been in law enforcement for 27 years in the state of Alabama and you have never seen racism or discrimination or any sort of problem with the way that cops interact with the community, then and you've never been in rooms where that's been happening, then you are not, either you're part of the problem or you are so disconnected from reality that, maybe people you should go to the psychiatrist and potentially take meds for for schizophrenia, right? Because you're not able to perceive the world as it is. And in fact, I thought it would be a funny thing to look up where this guy is from, and to see, has there been any recent problems with the police where he's from? And so I did look that up, and you may remember a couple of years ago, a small town called Vincent in Alabama actually abolished their police department, literally got rid of the whole thing because of racism in 2022. Right? And they abolished it because there was the police officers were joking about pregnant slaves being a buy one get one sale, and they were so. That's just the first thing that came up. There was a lot of other stuff going on about it, and so and so this was the Vincent Police Department. And the racism and corruption and stuff was so prevalent in this police department that they decided to abolish it. And where, you might ask, is the town of Vincent? The town of Vincent is in Shelby County, where this guy works for the sheriff's office, right? So literally just 4 years ago, a whole police department was abolished in the place that he represents. And he said, I've literally never seen a racism in my life. And I've been a police officer for 30 years. Well, buddy, you're the effing problem. If that's true, that's because you're racist. Right? So, good God. Right? It's just so crazy. And then I got another clip here just to illustrate, okay, Jake, well, maybe, sometimes Alabama police officers and Alabama law enforcement officers, maybe sometimes they're racist, but surely it's not federal law enforcement. Surely federal ICE is not doing this sort of stuff. Let's actually take a listen to ICE or to police officers in Minnesota and ask how off-duty police officers are being treated by ICE. Let's play clip 2.
As the last 2 weeks, we, as law enforcement community, have been receiving endless complaints about civil rights violations in our streets from U.S. citizens. What we're hearing is they're being stopped in traffic stops or on the street with no cause and being forced to demand paperwork to determine if they are here legally. We started hearing from our police officers the same complaints as they fell victim to this while off duty. Every one of these individuals is a person of color who has had this happen to them. I wish I could tell you that this was an isolated incident. In fact, many of the chiefs standing behind me have similar incidents with their off-duty officers.
Yeah, so there's I don't know what else to say. It's just it's such a stupid thing to say that you've been in law enforcement in Alabama for 27 years and I've never seen a racism. I mean, why would you say that? And there's, and so then that second clip was meant to illustrate that there's a problem specifically with ICE, which is the genesis of the conversation for this bill in the Alabama State House. So yeah, I don't know. It's just it's so frustrating and stupid that we've got people who are willing to say stuff like this. So there you go. There's my thoughts on that. Adam, do you have anything else to add?
Just for reference, no, I appreciated that, but just for reference, it's House Bill 13, and it's Representative Ernie Yarbrough from Lawrence County that is behind this. Just wanted to put that out there for folks. And they were real nasty with the people who testified at the committee hearing, going back and forth with folks who testified, and it was pretty unusual and pretty gross.
Yeah, I mean, unironically, like, these guys got triggered, and it is a shame that we couldn't have got and obviously when you go up to testify in the public comments for these bills, like it is very uncommon that the legislators will actually respond to you, and so they were probably not ready for interactions with the legislators. But it is a real shame that we couldn't get like a skirt, just like, hold on, can you say that again? You've been a cop in Alabama for 30 years and you never seen anybody do racism? Really? Like, really? I mean, it's like, yeah, it would have been great if we could have had a record scratch there and just make him kind of say those things again because they're so stupid. Let's see. I think that's all that I wanted to get to. We're like 20 minutes over, but I did want to get to those things. Adam, you want to get to anything else, or are you ready to wrap?
I think I'm ready to call it a day. Been a good show today. Really appreciate everybody hanging out with us. And did want to mention a couple things just to plug. As always, Labor Notes has events, trainings coming up. Go to labornotes.org/events. Check that out. And if you are in Alabama and you would like to talk to your lawmakers, perhaps about this bill or others, maybe you can talk about the realities of race in Alabama and educate your lawmaker. Alabama Arise is holding its legislative day a month from today on February 24th. So you may want to check that out. It's the Alabama Arise Action legislative day on Tuesday, February 24th. We'll be gathering at the State House. A couple hundred Alabamians who want to make life better for everyday people. And it's a chance to walk the halls of the State House, engage with lawmakers, see some debates, and network with people who really care and want things to be better for regular folks. So wanted to lift that up, especially since we ended the show talking about some of our interesting people down there in Montgomery.
All right, that's going to be it for us this week, folks. That's going to be it for us this week, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, bye, y'all. Holler if you need anything.